is to look after your children, to feed your children. And I sit and scratch my head and say, of all the things that we can do as parents, all the things we can spend money on, are you telling me that you can't give your kid a bit of toast and a cup of tea in the morning?
GB News, the People's Channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. Welcome to the show. And we begin with the show with the incident in Liverpool, where almost 50 people were injured yesterday evening during Liverpool FC's title-winning parade. And in an Instagram post, the Liverpool FC captain Virgil van Dijk said he was praying for a speedy recovery for all of those injured in the crash following the club's title parade. And the Dutch defender posted on Instagram, "My thoughts and prayers are with everybody affected, praying for a speedy recovery for everyone who suffered injuries. We are all with you." You can see there the famous live bird there, painted red, smoke around it, as a city in mourning, a city waiting for answers. And I believe we're going to get some more of those later on this afternoon. In the meantime, I'm joined in the studio in Westminster by GB News' political editor, Chris Hope. Chris, you're a Liverpool fan yourself. This shocked the entire football world. It shook all of Great Britain, and now this has gone around the world. Questions are being asked, answers being demanded, and I think this afternoon we will find out more. We hear and there from Liverpool players. We've heard from dignitaries, we've heard from the King, we've heard from the Prime Minister, a nation standing with Liverpool FC, a nation standing with Liverpudlians. Put club differences to one side. This is not about football, this is bigger than football. This is about humanity and finding answers. And a huge amount of questions being asked. Principally, the investigation will now begin meticulously. We've already seen a huge amount of CCTV footage. Yeah. That, of course, will be gathering thousands of people with mobile phones. Every single piece of that, a piece of evidence. But the big question is around the policing of this. And the first question is, how on earth was a car allowed to be in that area? The mayor of Liverpool has already come out, Steve Rotherham, saying 4 people are still very, very ill in hospital, and asking that question. This car should not have been there.
That is the big question. Steve Rotherham says, he's Liverpool's Metro Mayor, of course. He says that Water Street, where it happened, was not a route where vehicles were supposed to be using. It was blocked off. It may be this individual came out of a bar or somewhere else and then got into the car, tried to drive away, couldn't drive away. Altercations occurred and this happened. We don't know anything yet. We know it's not a terror incident. I think from the political side of that, we heard from Sir Keir Starmer earlier. He's deeply affected by it. We're all football clubs fans. I'm a Liverpool fan. He's an Arsenal fan. But it touches across any kind of club divide. This, you know, you had Crystal Palace yesterday, Arsenal women yesterday, Arsenal celebrating their win too. I mean, real concern. Tottenham, of course, their win too. Big concerns. I think what's interesting about this, that the lessons that have been learned by this same police force that was dealt with the Southport attacks last year. Emily Spurrell, who's the Police and Crime Commissioner for Merseyside, said now it's standard practice for forces to release a suspect's ethnicity. Because very quickly last night, Martin, and you may have been on air, we heard from the police it was a white British man in his 50s.
Within 2 hours.
Within 2 hours.
And there's a lot of questions
that matters
being
a lot.
asked.
That matters a lot.
It does matter, but a lot of people are saying, that's great. We found out the truth within 2 hours. Why didn't we find out any comparable levels of truth in Southport? And people like Nigel Farage gave a press conference today for the Reform Party saying this is precisely the kind of vacuum that caused the public unrest, that fed the fuel of those riots. In defence of Merseyside Police, in defence of the government, are there lessons that have been learned from Southport? And that is why they've been so responsive and so quick this time around.
Well, that's what we've heard from Emily Spurrell, who's the Policing and Crime Commissioner for Merseyside, the elected police chief, I suppose, of the county. She said today it's important people know who it was. Obviously, on this occasion, they were very clear around who the individual was and wanted to get that information out there as soon as possible. And there were people sharing, yet again, misinformation, disinformation to make communities anxious. That's why it matters so much. We all hope, frankly, lessons have been learned since Southport last year, and they can share the information as soon as they can, because there's no time when these dreadful attacks happen, it's a powder keg.
OK, well, I think we're waiting for some statements from the police later on this afternoon. In advance of that, Chris Hope, thank you very, very much. Waiting for Malt White's join us. But before that, another huge news event today. And, of course, that is the King will open Parliament in Canada. And a short while ago, the King and Queen, they released a statement in regard to the horrific event in Liverpool last night. And that said, my wife and I were deeply shocked and saddened to hear the terrible events that took place in Liverpool on Monday. It is truly devastating to see that what should have been a joyous celebration for so many could end in such distressing circumstances at this heartbreaking time for the people of Liverpool. I know that the strength of community spirit for which your city is renowned will be a comfort and support to those in need. Our prayers and deepest sympathy are with all of those who have been affected, and my special gratitude goes out to the first responders, the emergency services personnel, and other individuals who rushed to the aid of the injured. And the Prince and the Princess of Wales have also just released a statement, and it says this: "We are deeply saddened by the scenes in Liverpool yesterday. What should have been a joyful celebration ended with tragedy. Our thoughts are with those who were injured and to the first responders and emergency services on the ground, William and Kate." So moving on now to that royal trip to Canada. The King and Queen continue their visit to Canada today, and they are currently heading to the country's Senate, where they're accompanied by a royal escort, where they will receive full military honours. And that is live pictures there you can see on your screens, where they will receive full military honours, and that includes a 100-person Guard of Honour from the 3rd Battalion of the Royal Canadian Regiment, an inspection of the Guard and the band, and a 21-gun salute. And following this, the King will deliver his highly anticipated historic speech for the opening of the country's 45th Parliament, and discuss the pomp, the ceremony, the politics, the fallout and the joyousness of this event. I'm joined in the studio, delighted to say, by the former Attorney General, Sir Michael Ellis. Sir Michael, delighted to have your company. We can see live pictures on our screens here now. Of course, the world-famous Mount is there, resplendent in their red jackets. And there we have the King and Queen.
Absolutely, the King and Queen. Hello, Martin. And this is a very special and actually historic event. You can see them in the state landau there. Now, that's a carriage that actually began its life in Australia, as it happens. It was then bought by the Governor-General of Canada in 1911 from the Australians and gifted to Canada in perpetuity. And it's not the first time that the King has been in that carriage, but they've just arrived now, having been escorted by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. 14 police officers they are on horseback, 14 in front and 14 behind, and they've just brought them to the Senate of Canada building. And the Senate of Canada building actually is a temporary house for the upper chamber in Canada, because it's a former railway station. They are undergoing repairs at the moment with their main Parliament building. He appears to have been greeted there by Black Rod,
yes,
the Canadian equivalent of our Black Rod here in Parliament, and he's now standing on a dais where he's going to take a salute, I think.
Chris.
Michael, as I've seen many state openings of Parliament here, why is the King of Canada not wearing a crown?
Well, I think it's interesting to see that if you look at the old footage from 1957 and also from 1977, crowns weren't worn then either. So although Prince Philip was in military uniform in 1977 certainly, and I think in 57 too, but here they've decided clearly that a lounge suit is appropriate, although I think we can see His Majesty wearing Canadian honours there while the national anthem is being played.
And this courtyard arrived, of course, the inspection of the Guard. You can hear in the background there, Sir Michael, the gun salute. It's wonderful to see, actually, an example of a Commonwealth nation saying, actually, we love the Commonwealth, we love the King, come hither.
Oh, absolutely, Martin.
We hear so much now about let's have a vote.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Commonwealth, let's have a listen here.
you, Keane.
OK, and now let's join our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker, who is there for us in the ground in Canada. Cameron, we're getting some magnificent pictures here. We just heard that gun salute blasting out. So begins a day of majestic ceremony.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, Martin. The King just walking past my position here, inspecting his Guard of Honour, a 100-person Guard of Honour from a 3rd Battalion Royal Canadian Regiment. Of course, we've just had the Royal Salute. You may be able to hear a number of bangs in the background as well. 21 gun salutes in honour of His Majesty being here for just at the start of the state opening of the 45th session of the Canadian Parliament. His Majesty wearing a suit and customary medal array and Order of Canada around his neck, blue and white tie, of course, blue, one of his favourite colours. The Queen, you may have also noticed a little bit earlier on, she arrived alongside the King inside the state landau carriage. She is wearing a blue crepe silk embroidered dress by Fiona Clare, a navy blue hat by Philip Tracy, but perhaps more poignantly, her own Canadian Rifles brooch. The Queen, of course, has a personal connection to Canada. Her great-great-great-grandfather was a premier here in the former province of Canada before it parted ways from the British Empire. But Martin, the atmosphere here is incredible. The cheers from the crowd, singing the British national anthem, singing the Canadian national anthem, bearing in mind, of course, this is the King being here as King of Canada, so nothing really to do with the United Kingdom. It was just spectacular to see. Even Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, King again just walking past my position, even Mark Carney, the Prime Minister, got cheers from the crowds here. Of course, he's the one who is invited to open Parliament, elected very recently largely on an anti-Trump ticket, as President Trump has voiced his desire for Canada to become the 51st state of the United States of America, effectively annexing the country. But the King being here, of course, is a strong reminder to Canadians and those south of the border that it is King Charles who is head of state here in Canada.
And Cameron Walker, there is, of course, we can see now the cameras zooming in. We can see Mark Carney there. There's a huge amount of conversation, Cameron Walker, speculation about the politics of this speech because, of course, as you correctly said there, Mr Carney elected on an anti-Trump ticket, Donald Trump saying he would like Canada to be the 51st state of the United States. In a rather painful press conference in the Oval Office we carried live on my show when Mr Carney faced Donald Trump, he was saying everything's got a price, everything's for sale, and Mark Carney got his headline. He came away saying Canada is not for sale. Is there a danger, Cameron Walker, of the King being swept into a political debate here?
Well, there absolutely is, Martin, because, of course, Mark Carney also said that Canadians were very disappointed with Sir Keir Starmer for inviting President Trump for a state visit to the United Kingdom. Of course, King Charles, as King of the United Kingdom, would be the one rolling out the red carpet for him. So that does mean he's walking a bit of a tight diplomatic tightrope, doesn't it? Juggling his roles between King of Canada and King of the United Kingdom. Sources tell me that, look, the King has two roles, and those roles should be treated completely separately. He acts on the advice of the Canadian Premier as well as the UK government as well, and he will do so accordingly. So it's not, the King can't really do much if both of his governments clash on a certain issue. But the King's focus today is very much on celebrating Canadians, bringing Canadians together, the unity of this country, which is pretty clear to see. Every single Canadian I've spoken to over the last day or two has just said how much they were excited and how much they need King Charles here to reaffirm the country's sovereignty. Huge applause from the crowds here. Some of them have been queuing since around 6 o'clock this morning for a chance to meet their Majesties. We do expect His Majesty to do a walkabout at some point. It wasn't scheduled to happen right now. I can't see him from my position. Oh, he's just walking past us now, back towards the Senate, having inspected the 100-person Guard of Honour. And he'll be making his way into the Senate building. This building is a temporary Senate. It's an old train station because the current Parliament is being refurbished at the moment. So the King just standing on the dais and thanking the military personnel for the spectacular Guard of Honour, pomp and pageantry.
And Cameron Walker, it is a fascinating prospect because, of course, a lot of people thought that Sir Keir Starmer played a masterstroke when he went to the White House and he pulled dramatically that piece of paper from his inside pocket and promised a full state visit to Donald Trump. What do you give a billionaire who has everything? The answer is something money can't buy, a state visit. And here we are now, almost the tables turned. The king going to a sovereign territory, a Commonwealth state, almost acting like a de facto protector. The king of an overseas realm, dramatically riding in to save the day.
Yes, Martin, I'm just going to pause for the national anthem. You may be able to hear the Canadians singing behind my position as the King watches on from Canada's Parliament. Well, there you have it, Martin. I mean, you can just hear the atmosphere here, can't you? An incredibly patriotic nation of Canadians here sharing this moment with their head of state as he goes into the Senate to deliver a speech on behalf of his government, led by Prime Minister Carney, accompanied by Her Majesty the Queen there, the Governor-General of Canada, Mary Simon, the Prime Minister Mark Carney, a number of equerries as well. So, Martin, another cheer from the crowds as the King enters the building, many of which have been queuing for ages, but they've all got smiles on their faces, Martin. They're waving the Canadian flag. A truly special and quite rare moment for them, having their head of state physically in the country and in the capital city of Ottawa.
Yeah, magnificent science. And I know we speak a lot, we use that phrase on this show and others, of soft power, but I think this is more than soft power today. I think this is an actual power play. Let's get back to studio. Cameron Walker, excellent. Of course, we'll join you later on throughout the show, and we'll be live in the Canadian Parliament for that speech in full when it happens. But let's get back to the studio here in Westminster now and continue this fascinating chat with the former Attorney General, Sir Michael Ellis, is with me. Sir Michael, this notion of the King's riding in to save the day, or is he being swept into a political, melodrama that shouldn't be of his ilk? What's your take on this? It's a fascinating thing to watch.
It is fascinating, and it's really historic. I mean, this is the first time for 48 years that this has happened, and even then it happened only 20 years before that. And then in 1939, King George VI and the late Queen Mother visited a famous visit in 1939 before the outbreak of World War II. So it's rare, it's historic. But, this is a tightrope, as Cameron was saying. It really is. And when you think about, certainly since the Statute of Westminster in 1931, all of the realms are equal in status. It's not like the United Kingdom is technically superior. Since 1931, they're all equal, and there are 15 realms that the King has. So in theory, if 15 separate countries had slightly different opinions on something, the King would have to walk a tightrope between all 15. Yeah. But here I think Carney's played a blinder. I really do. I think he's played a blinder because he's got the ammunition to display some sovereignty here for his country, and he's exercised that ammunition. He's using it in the person of probably the world's greatest advocate of soft power, and that is His Majesty the King.
And it's so fascinating, as we were saying before we went to Ottawa there for the live pictures. Oftentimes it seems to be more fashionable to say we'd like to get rid of our sovereignty. We'd like to have a vote. We've heard this in Jamaica with so much talk over the years. In Australia, it's wonderful, I think, to see a country embracing
Isn't it great?
The Commonwealth and sovereignty like this.
And the Canadians have always been very secure in themselves about that, and polls in Canada show pretty much all of the provinces, all 10 of the provinces, with an increase in support for the monarchy. And I think, more power to them. They're seeing here now an absolute example of the strength in monarchy, and the if you like, the visual displays, even to the extent of the Order of Canada that the King is wearing, which was an order created in 1967 to actually look like a snowflake, by the way. You know, the Canadian style of honour with I think six leaves of a snowflake, and it's the second highest honour in Canada, and the King, of course, is sovereign of that order. And we're going to see, in due course, him deliver a very important speech, a strategically important speech from the throne.
That's quite a moment. I mean, just looking here at the polling, actually, you referred to then, Michael, Ipsos Public Affairs finding that 2/3 of people in Canada believe Canada's relationship with the monarchy is useful because it helps us set us apart from our neighbours to the south. That's America, of course, up from just over half a year ago. There's been a big boost, isn't there, in support for the monarchy?
Absolutely.
And I wonder, actually, this speech, because all eyes, every single word of this speech will be pulled over, will be micro-analysed, because in advance of it, of course, Mr. Carney has been eschewing the historic ties that crises only fortify. A clear flash of the garter there, Sir Michael, as to the fact that Donald Trump is hoving into view, the threat over the border, and in comes the King to strengthen the bond. So keep your hands off our territory, Mr. Trump.
Well, exactly. And what's going to be fascinating about this, of course, is that this speech will have been written by the Canadian government for His Majesty. The British government has nothing to do with it.
Does that carry a risk?
Well, it does always carry a potential for controversy, but I think the Canadian government will have been sensitive to that issue. And the King has a private secretary who's a Canadian private secretary. And we'll see that now.
I'm afraid I have to now interrupt you because we're crossing to Merseyside for an update on the incident yesterday.
Yesterday's devastating incident on Water Street in Liverpool city centre. Prior to the incident, hundreds of thousands of people lined the streets of Liverpool and the city centre to pay tribute to Liverpool Football Club as they paraded their Premier League trophy. The atmosphere was electric, but sadly, just after 6 p.m, the joy of the day dissipated quickly after more than 50 people were injured when a car collided with people gathered on Water Street. We had worked extensively with event organisers and key partner agencies in the months ahead of the potential parade, and a robust traffic management plan was in place, which included a number of local authority road closures throughout the route and the city centre. This included Water Street, which was closed to traffic. It is believed the driver of the Ford Galaxy car involved in this incident was able to follow an ambulance onto Water Street after the roadblock was temporarily lifted so that the ambulance crew could attend to a member of the public who was having a suspected heart attack. As with many large events, with event organisers, we planned for all contingencies, and this included the implementation of road closures to protect pedestrians, and an armed policing presence was also in place throughout the day. There was no intelligence to suggest an incident of this nature would take place, and as we've previously stated, the incident is not being treated as terrorism. An extensive investigation into the precise circumstances of the incident is ongoing, and we continue to ask people not to speculate on the circumstances surrounding the incident and refrain from sharing distressing content online. I have no doubt regarding the impact that this appalling incident has had on those who were injured, their family and friends, and for those who witnessed the incident unfolding in front of them. It is so heartening to hear that the public has also recognised the human impact on our attending officers, staff and other emergency service colleagues from North West Ambulance Service and Merseyside Fire and Rescue. And I want to personally thank the public for their support of first responders who were on scene in a matter of seconds. Following the incident yesterday, I can confirm on behalf of the National Health Service that we are aware of 50 people who were treated at hospital for ongoing treatment. Of those, 11 remain in hospital for ongoing treatment. They are all in a stable condition, and I am pleased to say that they appear to be recovering well. I want to take the opportunity to pay tribute to the brave members of the emergency services who were on the scene of yesterday's incident within a matter of seconds. Following such a shocking incident, they immediately ran towards an extremely uncertain and potentially dangerous situation in an effort to protect members of the public and fellow emergency responders from harm. Merseyside Police continues to work with other emergency services, Liverpool City Council, Liverpool City Combined Regional Authority, local hospitals and health providers, and Liverpool Football Club, collectively in response to this incident. An extensive investigation into the precise circumstances of the incident is ongoing, and we continue to ask people not to speculate on the circumstances surrounding the incident and refrain from sharing distressing content online. Information, including video footage, can be passed via the Merseyside Police Major Incident Police portal, and all details are available on our website. Anyone with information or footage should contact Merseyside Police social media desk via X at MERPOLCC or on Facebook, Merseyside Police Contact Centre, or call 101. Alternatively, contact the independent charity Crime Stoppers anonymously on 0800 555 111 or via their website. I'm now going to hand over to Detective Chief Superintendent Karen Jaundrell, who will update on the investigation.
Thank you. My thoughts are with all those injured in this awful incident, their families and friends, and everyone who has been affected. Like us, many of you will still be coming to terms with what was a harrowing end to a day of celebration. I want to reassure the public of Merseyside that detectives are making significant progress as we seek to establish the full circumstances that led to this awful incident and bring the person responsible to justice. We have arrested a 53-year-old man from West Derby on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving offences and driving whilst unfit through drugs. He remains in custody where he is being interviewed. We have a total of 65 confirmed casualties, many of whom required hospital treatment, and our officers and family liaison officers are providing specialist support to a large number of these victims. Further work is ongoing to identify other people affected, and we will continue to support these individuals in the days and weeks to come. Due to the number of victims in this case, we have received assistance from our neighbouring forces, for which we are extremely grateful. Our detectives are speaking to any witnesses, including those injured, witnesses at the scene and emergency responders, as we seek to get a full picture of exactly what happened. In addition, extensive CCTV inquiries are being carried out across the city to establish the movements of the car, a Ford Galaxy, before the incident took place. We have already had an incredible response from many of those who were there last night. I thank them for their cooperation and support with our investigation. And I would encourage anyone who has not yet contacted the police who may have information on this incident to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that was a statement there from Merseyside Police, giving a large amount of detail there. First, the Assistant Chief Constable, Jenny Sims, and then Detective Chief Superintendent Karen Jaundrell. Let's pick over that data now, joined by our Homeland Security Editor, Mark White. Mark, some key details coming out there. First of all, the fact that theory seems to now bear fruit, that the vehicle got access by following an ambulance, and then some more details about the charges placed against the individual. Brings up to speed.
Yes, I mean, this would follow on really from what we got at the last news briefing at 11 o'clock last night, when the police did point to the fact that there were vehicle traffic management measures in place and roadblocks around the footprint of this parade, which begged the question of how on earth did this vehicle then get into the footprint of that parade. Well, now, according to the Assistant Chief Constable of Merseyside Police, the theory that this vehicle tailgated effectively an ambulance that was heading into that footprint to respond to an injured party, and the barriers were lifted temporarily to allow the ambulance in. It seems the vehicle then followed that ambulance in as well. And in terms of the number of people injured, well, a significant rise in the numbers treated in hospital. Last night we were told that 27 people had required hospital treatment. Now the police saying that 50 people in total were treated in hospital. 11 of those people who were injured remain in hospital today. On the very positive side, though, she said all were in a stable condition and all were responding well to the treatment that they were receiving. So that is both incredible and very encouraging, given the scenes that we saw and the number of casualties involved. The fact that at one point 4 people were pinned underneath this car after it came to a halt, including 3 adults and a child. They had to be freed by the Fire and Rescue Service. Then we also heard about the investigation itself, an extensive investigation, the Assistant Chief Constable told us, into the precise circumstances of the incident, ongoing, urging people not to speculate. Well, of course, that's never going to happen. Of course, people are going to fill the information vacuum, and they have been. Some of it right, some of it wrong. That's why these news updates from the police and other emergency services are so vital in giving us actual facts of what is happening on the ground. We heard then from Detective Chief Superintendent Karen Dondrell there about that ongoing investigation. She said detectives were making significant progress in their efforts to bring the person responsible to justice, she said. An individual, a 53-year-old man, has been arrested on suspicion of dangerous and careless driving, and driving, she said, while unfit through drugs. Again, that's a piece of new information we weren't privy to before. So some significant lines, Martin, coming out. We've waited a long time, 16 hours since the last update, but at least we're a little clearer in some of the events, the tailgating of that ambulance with a view to this vehicle getting through the barriers, and the fact that this man has been arrested on suspicion of dangerous, careless driving and, of course, driving while under the influence of drugs.
Okay, Mark White, thank you there for that summary of that press conference. And now we're crossing live to our reporter, Charlie Peters, who joins us from Liverpool. Charlie, welcome to the show. So some significant detail there being laid down, and the primary piece of information there, a man from West Derby, as I understand it, that's a suburb of Liverpool to the left of the city, attempted murder. The charge, unfit to drive due to the presence of drugs, and a confirmation there that the vehicle appears to have followed an ambulance into the area to gain access. And on the ground there, Charlie Peters, still a community very much trying to get its head around what is a terrible tragedy to hit the city.
Well, good afternoon, Martin. And yes, just to pick up where Mark left off there, it is the update at the end from Detective Chief Superintendent Karen Dondrell, which I think was the most significant, to update us on the status of the suspect that they had in custody, that 53-year-old from West Derby, as you say, a suburb of Liverpool, a couple of kilometres northeast out of the city centre, being held at the moment on suspicion of attempted murder, driving offences and also driving unfit through drugs. She also confirmed that there were some 65 casualties who had presented themselves, that announcement being made earlier also on behalf of the NHS here at Merseyside Police Headquarters. And of those 65, we also heard an update that 11 are receiving ongoing treatment, some 50 who had presented to hospital, more than 50 injured as that car collided with people in Water Street in the city centre, with the Assistant Chief Constable Jenny Sims there describing the atmosphere at that trophy parade as electric before this horror occurred. We also heard about how they had a robust plan in place for managing traffic, how there were armed police in attendance to this location, in attendance for monitoring the full parade, so extensive as it was, covering several hours, but also that they had no intelligence to indicate that a situation of this nature would occur. And then there was that key detail and the question that many have been asking, which is how on earth did that Ford Galaxy be driven into an area that was clearly cordoned off for vehicles, was pedestrians only, as was much of the city centre for almost 1 million people attending for that trophy presentation parade. And we were hearing that it's believed that the driver of the Ford Galaxy was able to follow an ambulance who was responding to a suspected heart attack during the parade. And we also heard that, of course, as was reiterated last night, it's a key piece of information that the police are very keen to put forward. This incident is not being treated as terrorism. They reconfirmed that an extensive investigation is ongoing, and we anticipate there will be further information from Merseyside Police as that investigation continues.
Thank you, Charlie Peters, and of course we'll keep our viewers up to speed as fresh information is released. Charlie Peters, live from Liverpool, thank you very much for joining us on the show. Now moving back to Canada now, to Ottawa, because of course the royal family, the King and the Queen, are in Canada and they're about to open Parliament there. Fantastic moment, live pictures on your screen. You can see that I'm joined in the studio by the former Attorney General, Sir Michael Ellis. Michael, tell us about this stage here. This is where the pomp, the ceremony begins, the build-up towards that massively anticipated speech.
Well, Martin, you can see now His Majesty's just invited those present in the Senate chamber to be seated. He's himself sitting on a relatively modern throne. That throne was only constructed about 20, 30 years ago. It contains English walnut from the Windsor Castle estate that our late Queen gave to Canada as a gift to help construct that throne. And you can see in front of His Majesty members of the Supreme Court of Canada in their robes, very similar to the judicial robes in England, of course, and except without the wigs. And he's hearing now an address.
Dans la salle du Sénat.
And I think you're going to hear some more French when His Majesty speaks. This is Black Rod now in his bicorn hat. The Black Rod is a 600-year-old office of state, which of course comes from England. He's called that because he carries an ebony rod. The ebony rod that this Black Rod is carrying is a gift, actually, from the Westminster Parliament 100 years ago. Their original Black Rod from the 1870s was destroyed in a fire in 1916, so the British House of Commons gave the Canadian House of Commons a new Black Rod in about 1918. This Black Rod has now been sent off by the King to go and bring the Canadian members of the House of Commons over to hear His Majesty's speech. And you'll see that there are a number of ceremonial uniforms that are being worn. The tricorn hat will feature quite a bit in this arrangement. We actually seem to have got rid of our tricorn hats largely in the Westminster Parliament, although you do sometimes see the Lord Speaker, the Lord Commissioner, wearing tricorn hats. But now, I think before His Majesty speaks, they're going to be performing a little bit of music, and I think the nations of Canada, including the Indigenous peoples of Canada, will also be taking part in some light entertainment, while I think they're waiting for the members of the House of Commons to take their time to come over to be summoned to the Senate chamber.
It's beautiful music. It's absolutely beautiful.
It is indeed.
Simple violin, kind of folk music, of course, the kind of stuff they've been playing in the frontiers there, the Canadian frontiers for generations, centuries. Beautiful connection.
And Martin, your viewers can see Mark Carney sitting right there. Now, this is different because, of course, in the Westminster Parliament, when we have a state opening, the Prime Minister is at the bar of the House of Lords, well back from the throne. Here, the Canadian Prime Minister is sitting right next to His Majesty and no doubt will be listening very intently to the speech that His Majesty delivers to see exactly every word that has been nuanced through in preparation. I understand that Prime Minister Carney worked on the speech himself, and there was a team of people working on it. So that was information the Canadian authorities released. So we know this is about to come from the Canadian government, and it'll be very interesting to see what His Majesty says in a speech that's apparently going to last about 25 minutes.
I have to say, Queen Camilla looks very chic in that hat and that sort of wonderful kind of indigo-coloured dress and the pearls. She looks wonderful.
Well, I wonder whether she's actually wearing the maple leaf brooch, because King George VI gave the late Queen Mother a diamond on platinum maple leaf brooch in 1939, which was then worn by the Queen Mother and then by Her late Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, and has now been inherited by Queen Camilla. So I wouldn't be surprised if she's wearing that. Although she may have been wearing that yesterday, so she may be wearing something different.
OK, well, let's bring in another guest now. Hoving interview. It's the Raw reporter at the Daily Express, Pandora Forsyth. Pandora, you join us at a wonderful moment. A sort of wonderful, simple folk music being played as Parliament is being gathered and ushered through. His and Her Majesty there waiting. Round of applause there from Mark Carney, the sitting Premier. Beautiful moment.
Yeah, it's so significant as well. I think this very much goes to show that the King is not going to stop working anytime soon. This is a very quick trip for him across to Canada, but extremely significant, given everything that's happening on the political spectrum at the moment. And I think it just goes to show soft power at play. We don't usually see the royal family, be so close with politicians and actually see them in the mix of it. We see them, representing various different diplomats when they come over for state events, but we don't really see them at the heart of it, of course. We see it within our own Houses of Parliament. And of course, there's been a few changes, so we might have seen that a bit more regularly than we would have hoped over the past few years. But to see this in Canada is quite something. This is the third time that this has happened. And the King, of course, is stepping into his late mother's shoes. This will be extremely personal for him, and I'm sure it won't go amiss for him within his brain. Actually, what is happening, even in the throne that he's sitting on, was commissioned by his late mother from the trees in Windsor's Great Park. So everything has got significance in this from a personal perspective for him, but obviously his role as the King.
And let's quickly bring back in now Sir Michael Ellis, former Attorney General, of course, yourself, Sir Michael. And here's the King just meeting that's the Canadian top brass of their legal system, I'm assuming, there.
It is, and you can see, in fact, behind the military officers, so you'll have the Chief of the Canadian Defence Staff there, and the Chief of the Naval Staff, Air Staff and General Staff. And he's now meeting the principal figures of the Senate. The Canadian Senate actually has become a very important revising chamber in the Canadian system. It follows closely and analyses deeply the bills that are passed by the Canadian House of Commons. And it's become a very important place in Canada for Indigenous representation. And I think His Majesty is therefore being introduced to a number of people who are guests there today.
And Pandora, let's bring you back in at that point. It's just wonderful to see the the Commonwealth being greeted with such open arms. I mean, how many times do we hear about, a country wants to leave the Commonwealth, they want to have a referendum to get rid of the stain of the British Empire? You know, we hear so much negativity about the legacy of that. And isn't it wonderful to have a new Prime Minister invite the King and ostensibly to defend the realm? It's beautiful.
Yeah, you're quite right. It is beautiful, and what an honour as well for the King, who gratefully received this invitation. Of course, it was an invite that he could have, in the current circumstances, turned down, but he didn't. That's how much it means to him to go across there, and for the Queen as well. This is a very proud moment for the King, and I think it just goes to show that these relationships are so special for us, actually, as Britain. It's very special to see this on this kind of stage. And of course, to display the Commonwealth, as you said, in such positive light. You know, I report on the royal family. It's not always positive. And actually, to be fair to the King, they're used to, you know, hearing people who aren't necessarily fans of the royal family, who follow the royal family. But for any people who are watching on a worldwide stage today and seeing this, then actually there is a place for the royals. And especially with all of this happening within politics at the moment, it's great to see that it's actually can be put to good use and display sovereignty for Canada, which is why Mark Carney invited him over to do this. And he's not doing anything. When you hear the speech, he's top and tailing it, and we can speak about that more later. But he is literally just going to set out what the government is going to do. And it's a quick trip for the King, but one which is extremely poignant and special, as I said, from a personal and from the perspective of the royal family, when they have so much pushback from various people about their roles. Well, I think this just goes to show there is a place.
And Pandora Forsyth, we're expecting that speech around about 4:10 British time, so around about 25-30 minutes time, if things go according to plan, of course. Pandora, there's a huge amount of anticipation about, yeah, it's great that the King is there and opening Parliament, but is there a danger, particularly if the speech is written by Mark Carney, lest we forget, was elected on a very anti-Trump ticket. Canada is not for sale. Hands off our country. And there will be, no doubt, historic ties that are highlighted today. The link between the two nations remains strong, but also there's a quote here: crises only fortify that relationship. That crisis, of course, is Donald Trump. Is there a risk, Pandora Forsyth, that the King might get swept into politics?
Yeah, I'm sure the White House is going to listen to every single word, and Trump is now definitely going to listen to every single word, because he loves the royals. He absolutely loves the royals, and this is the one thing that Trump just can't have in the US. Of course, they can visit, but on a very, very different basis, of course. The royals can host him, as they have done in the past, and they will be doing so in the future. But can they get this? No, this is the card that Carney wanted to play, and he is playing it beautifully. But you're quite right, there is a line with the royals, and they can't quite cross it when it comes down to politics. So this will not have only gone past Carney's team, but this would have also gone past the royal family's comms team as well. Every single word will have been gone over with a fine tooth comb. And of course, a lot of this is pomp and pageantry, and very much, you know, as he is doing right here, he's very good at sort of being the people's king, speaking to people for only a short amount of seconds, but making them feel like he's really got their ear. And of course, Trump will be listening, the White House will be listening, but we do also know that the King and the Trump also have their own relationship. We know that Melania, Trump's wife, the First Lady, has also received letters off the King. So this is funny, isn't it? We've got two relationships going on, but I think Carney's very much coming up top right now, and he's coming in very strong into a new government. This is the one thing America can't have. And as I'm sure we all know, covering Trump, that will really wind him up, I'm sure. But you're quite right. We need to be very careful when we're playing with politics and the royal family. And I would just like to say that this is a good display of what the royal family is all about. And it's on a worldwide stage, and we can all see, and this speech is going to be gone over, as I said, with a fine-tooth comb from every single aspect.
OK, Pandora Forsyth, thank you. Stay on the line, please, but let's get back now to Sir Michael in the studio. Sir Michael Ellis, fascinating build-up. And look, Justin Trudeau.
Yes, indeed.
The forgotten man almost, Hoved interview.
And his father, Pierre Trudeau, was Prime Minister when the late Queen last came to the Canadian Parliament. What Pandora was saying is absolutely true, but if there's anybody who can do it and do it well, it's His Majesty the King. Because it's all about personal relationships, and the Trudeaus actually point to that, because there aren't many people who can say to a Prime Minister, well, I knew your father and I worked with your father in some sort of capacity. It's about personal relationships. The King, remember, has had the longest run-in before becoming sovereign. He's been the longest-serving Prince of Wales by a long margin. And in that time, he didn't waste that time. He worked extremely hard and he built amazing relationships throughout the world. All corners of the world, and those relationships count. And of course, he had a relationship with Mark Carney because Carney was previously the Bank of England boss, and so he knew Mark Carney from that field. And now, of course, when Mark Carney became Prime Minister in their recent election, and he very quickly asked the King if he could come and open the Canadian Parliament, the answer, we can see the answer was a very firm yes, and that's why we're here today.
And let's face it, there is some naked politics on display here behind the regality, the ceremony. This can't harm Mark Carney. He's fought off.
Oh, it's gold dust, Mark.
I mean, this is electoral gold dust.
It's absolutely electoral gold dust, and in the presence of this sort of state, this type of ceremony, politicians absolutely love it. They vie to get... You've seen probably the pictures of members of the British House of Commons rushing to get a place every time there's a state opening of Parliament because they want to be associated, well, they want to be seen, they want to be on camera, they want to be connected to this type of event. And, of course, this is very important as a signal for Mark Carney to send to their American neighbours to their south. And I've no doubt, as Pandora was saying, that they really will receive that message loud and clear. Here now you can see members, we just saw they're members of the Canadian House of Commons making their way, no doubt at a relatively leisurely pace, over to the Senate building, while the King is being presented. A number of visitors, of course, and guests there are being presented to His Majesty. But the bond between Canada and the royal family is a very strong one. Many of your viewers may recall the horse Burmese that the late Queen used to ride for Trooping the Colours. She rode Burmese for 18 years. As someone who adored horses all her life, I think Burmese was one of her favourites, no doubt in hundreds of horses, and that had been a gift from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police.
Beautiful.
And the Mounties kept giving horses to the late Queen. I believe they gave something like 8 horses to the Queen as a gift. So far, they've actually given His Majesty the King a horse called Noble in 2023. And that's part of the bond. The regiments that the King was given, the 21-gun salute by the 3rd Battalion, as you saw, of the Royal Canadian Regiment. And that bond is a real one. They have... their brothers in arms are part of the household division here in the UK, and there are bonds and connections between the royal family that really have subsisted since day one. This is, of course, the 45th Parliament of Canada from their confederation and in 1867, and we have seen throughout that history a connection that the late Queen often referred to when she went to Canada as coming home. And here now, the King is visiting. It's the first time he's visited as sovereign, but it's the 20th time he's visited Canada. And on all those other occasions, he was Prince of Wales. But the bond there is a very strong one. There's the famous story, of course, where they were considering evacuating the late Queen Mother during World War II
right,
to Canada.
Right, yeah,
and it was
stayed.
She, that's right, and she famously said, well, the children won't leave me, I won't leave the King, and the King will never leave. But it was Canada that was going to be the emergency location.
And it's so fascinating to mention the bond of the band of brothers. It was so recently after V-Day, 80th anniversary, of course. Canadian forces, a huge part of the Allied efforts on D-Day itself. Later on this afternoon, I think around about just after 5 p.m, the King and the Queen will lay a wreath at the National War Memorial in Ottawa. And that's another key bond, a legacy, not just of crown, but of battlefield. So important.
Oh, absolutely. And a very moving moment and a very poignant one. And we'll see there, after the King gives his speech, we'll see him go to the War Memorial there and lay a wreath in honour of the fallen. And of course, the Canadian armed forces fought with the imperial forces, including, of course, the home forces of the British, throughout history. And World War I, in fact, this building, the Senate building, was the train station originally, which was the embarkation point for World War I Canadian soldiers, where they left to travel to Europe. And it's been converted into the Senate building temporarily because their main Parliament building is undergoing a 10-year refurbishment, something I might add our own Parliament building actually needs, but no one's got round to doing it just yet. But I think now he's resumed his seat on that throne, the walnut having been gifted by the late Queen from the grounds of Windsor Castle. You can see Her late Majesty's ER cipher on that throne. That'll be there in perpetuity. And the throne actually contains maple leaves, which of course are associated with the Canadian government and the arms of Canada there. That throne was created for the Canadian 150th anniversary since the Federation, the sesquicentennial, and the original throne actually is also undergoing repairs. That was built in the 1870s, and that's undergoing repairs. So they're using this throne, which has been placed in this building whilst the main place is being refurbished.
Thank you, Sir Michael. Just a quick summary for joining us on GB News. You can see live pictures from Ottawa, Canada. That, of course, is King Charles, Queen Camilla and Mark Carney, the Premier of Canada, around about 10 minutes away from the King addressing the 45th session of Parliament opening, and the King will address the nation, the world, in a highly anticipated speech. Of course, the subtext being Donald Trump was trying to see if Canada wants to be the 51st state of America. Today, this cementing the fact, hands off, this is part of sovereign territory, this is part of the Commonwealth. Can I bring in Pandora Forsyth, waiting very patiently in the wings there, but fascinating stuff. And Pandora, doesn't this just cement the fact that every time that the King and the Queen seem to go abroad, they seem to get it more and more comfortable. They just seem to be really, really just slotting into the groove.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how comfortable does Camilla look right now? I mean, she looks so at ease speaking to people, and they just work so well as a team together on a world stage. They know that this is so important, not only to Mark Carney, to the people of Canada, but to Great Britain. They know they've got this overwhelming pressure on them, all eyes on them about their personal lives, what they're doing in their work lives day to day, representing the monarchy. And they're just going around the room, talking to dignitaries, members of Parliament. I mean, they are so well, I guess, trained for this moment, aren't they? I mean, the King very much worked up to this moment for all his life, and he was in the great steps of his late mother. And every single thing that he's doing is always leading back to the late, great Queen, who I'm sure gave him plenty of advice along the way. And I'm sure actually that's one of the reasons, I am guessing, speculating here, okay, that is why he said yes to going today, because she knew that she had such a special relationship with Canada. And he's just reinforcing that today. No, he's not staying for long, but he's doing his bit as the monarch, representing the Commonwealth and a new time for Canada. And that is so vitally important when you've got eyes on you all the time, talking about your role and what you are doing as the royal family. And we're being shown it here together as a team.
I wonder, Sir Michael Ellis, about the makeup of the parliamentary body here. We obviously have different politics in every country. Canada has been criticised as becoming like a super woke democracy, obsessed with identity politics, obsessed with indigenous cultures, with white supremacy, with pronouns, with climate change. I wonder if everybody in that chamber, Sir Michael Ellis, shares the sense of joy that perhaps others do about the royals being there, or is that just put to one side for today? This is simply an occasion where Canada comes together.
Well, hopefully this will be an occasion where Canada comes together, and it's certainly showing every sign of being that. And they recognise, I think, that the King, as King of Canada, is someone who unifies the nation. That's what this is all about. Now, that doesn't mean to say in any jurisdiction that the monarch has 100% support, because unless you're in North Korea, your leaders do not have 100% support. We know that. So bearing that in mind, you have to look at it from the point of view of, does this have majority support? Do the vast majority of people think this is a good thing? And they clearly do. As Cameron was saying earlier, the crowds outside were forming at 6 o'clock in the morning, Ottawa time. They don't have the opportunity to see the royals coming past in their state landau very often, and they were relishing the opportunity to do so. And the Mounties were in force, the Canadian regiment, which actually Prince Philip, our late Prince Philip, was Colonel-in-Chief of that regiment for nearly 70 years. What an extraordinary long time to do that job, from something like 1953 until 2021. And the bond there is so close between the royals and the Canadian people. That's not to say there isn't dissent. That's not to say there aren't those who feel that another arrangement should be in place. But I think they are very much the minority.
And it has to be said, if you're the governor of the tourism board of Canada now, you'd be doing cartwheels.
Yeah, they'll be on cloud nine.
Canada on the world stage, beautiful country, not without its social issues, of course, housing shortages, immigration issues, all of that, but that's not for today. As a nation on the world stage with the king there, this is, as you said, gold dust, not just politically, but for the entire nation's popularity and image around the world.
It's a boost to the national image. It's a boost to the sovereignty of the nation, which is exactly why it's happening. I think that won't be lost on Donald Trump. I read somewhere that Donald Trump, recognising the power of the throne, if you like, wants to have his own birthday parade. Not for himself, I might add, Martin, but he wants to have an American birthday parade similar to the sort of Trooping the Colour arrangement.
I bet he does.
And that won't surprise many people listening. But let's see if that takes off. But, of course, our Trooping the Colour is coming up in a couple of weeks, and that's one of the occasions that the nation shows itself for, of course, the unity of the nation, but also for the tourism as well, that aspect, and our loyal armed forces.
Pandora Forsyth, I think we're around about 7 or 8 minutes away. Those parliamentarians, I think you're right there, Sir Michael, taking a leisurely stroll. They should get a clip on, lads and ladies. Come on, it's the king. Show some respect. I digress. On a serious point, Mark Carney here milking this moment for all it's worth, you'd imagine. And Pandora Forsyth, do you reckon? Over the border to the south, Donald Trump, through gritted teeth, having to admit it's one thing to be invited to Britain for a royal visit. It's quite another to have the king come to your country and open state parliament like this.
Yeah, quite. And he won't be able to, this is something Trump won't be able to buy. And McCarthy's made it quite clear Canada's not for sale either. So he can have this relationship with the king, but it's a personal relationship with the king. He can be hosted by the king. He can have a fantastic friendship even if you wanted, with the king. But the one thing he cannot have is being part of the Commonwealth. And no matter how much of a great president some people may think he is or not, that's the one thing that he cannot have. So I'm sure through gritted teeth he is watching this, and perhaps he'll be sending the king a note afterwards.
May it please Your Majesty.
But I think
Pandora.
The House
I
of
think
Commons
now
has
the
elected me their
ceremony is
speaker,
about to commence.
though I am
Sir
but
Michael,
little
can you
able
talk
to
us through
fulfill the important
what's happening
He's
here?
being handed the
thus
speech now that
assigned
he's
to me.
about to deliver. I think we're going to see
If in
His
the
Majesty
performance
deliver
of
some of it in
duty,
French,
I should at any
and
time
he's
fall
about
into
to start.
error. I pray that the fault may be imputed to me and not to the House of Commons, whose servant I am, and who,
This is the Speaker
through me,
of the Canadian
better
House of
to enable
Commons.
them to discharge their duty to their king and country, humbly claim all their undoubted rights and privileges, especially
He's just been
that they may have
appointed,
freedom of speech in their debates,
elected as the
access to Your
Speaker of the
Majesty's
Canadian House of
person
Commons. He
at
was
all
ceremonially
seasonable
dragged
times,
to the Speaker's
and that their
chair, as we do
proceedings
with
may
our Speaker.
receive from Your
That's for
Majesty
the understandable
most
reason that
favourable
7
construction.
Speakers of the House of Commons had their head chopped off during the period of between 1400 and
Plaise à votre
1550.
Majesté.
And
La
he'll
Chambre
be
des
saying the same
Communes
thing
m'a
now
élu
in
président.
French. This is
Bien
claiming
que
the
je sois
rights
peu
of
capable de
parliamentarians. They
remplir
also
les devoirs
get this, of
importants
course,
qui
from
me
the
sont
English system
par là
at the start of
assignés.
each session
Si
of
dans
Parliament,
l'exécution de ces devoirs,
where they claim the right to be able to
jamais de faire
speak
une erreur,
without
je
let or
demande
hindrance.
que la faute me soit
And
imputée et non
he's
aux communes.
hearing that address
Je suis
now,
le serviteur
which will be nodded through
qui, en vue de
before he
s'acquitter le
then
mieux
delivers
possible de
his
leurs
speech. And
devoirs
one
envers
of the
le roi et le
attributes, of
pays,
course, that His Majesty does have
humblement
is the ability to speak a number of languages. You
Yes.
don't see that in many politicians, I have to say. And of course, we heard him really making an impact in Italian, I think, when he went to Italy, in German, when he did the state visit to Germany, and in French. And I think we're going to find this speech alternating between French and English. That's certainly what the late Queen did 48 years ago. And we'll, I suspect, hear him testing his French out here.
So just building up to the big moment here, the King flicking through that speech, leafing through it, building up to the big moment.
And
Mr.
every
Speaker,
word of this...
I am commanded by His Majesty the King to declare to you that he freely confides in the duty and attachment of the House of Commons to His Majesty's person
So
and
this is the
government,
response that His Majesty
and not
has
doubting that their
pre-prepared,
proceedings will be
affirming
conducted with
that
wisdom,
their rights are
temper,
maintained and
and
they will be
prudence.
able to
He grants and upon
speak
all
freely
occasions will
in their
recognize and
chamber.
allow
And
their
so this is the
constitutional
response. But
privileges. I'm commanded also to assure you that the Commons shall have ready access to His Majesty upon all seasonable occasions, and that their proceedings, as well as your words and actions, will constantly receive from him the most favorable construction.
So now that ceremony having been concluded, she's going to say the same thing, I think, in French. But what, of course, the Canadian parliamentarians will recognise here is that it's an opportunity to acknowledge an important element of their sovereignty and the differences between themselves and their friends to the south. There's a close bond, actually, historically between Canadians and Americans, including rivalry on the sports fields and arenas. But here, that has been tested by recent political developments, and of course, the suggestion of President Trump that they become a 51st state and so on, which, understandably, the Canadian people have firmly rejected. So this is a ceremonial opportunity, but it's an important political opportunity too for Mark Carney, and His Majesty, I think, is about to now deliver his speech.
I think he is, this is it. Having difficulty opening the leaves there. These fingers.
Honourable Senators, members of the House of Commons, it is with a deep sense of pride and pleasure that my wife and I join you here today as we witness Canadians coming together in a renewed sense of national pride, unity and hope. I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. This land acknowledgement is a recognition of shared history as a nation, while continuing to deepen my own understanding. It is my great hope that in each of your communities and collectively as a country, a path is found toward truth and reconciliation in both word and deed. This is my 20th visit to Canada, spread over the course of more than half a century, and my first as sovereign. As I've said before, every time I come to Canada, a little more of Canada seeps into my bloodstream, and from there straight to my heart. I've always had the greatest admiration for Canada's unique identity, which is recognized across the world for bravery and sacrifice in defense of national values and for the diversity and kindness of Canadians. To the First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples, you have welcomed my family and myself to your traditional lands with great warmth and hospitality, for which I am humbly grateful. This year, we mark the 80th anniversary of VE Day and VJ Day. On Juno Beach, at Dieppe, on the Somme, at Beaumont-Hamel, at Ypres, and on Vimy Ridge. At those places and many others, forever etched into our memories, Canadians fought and died alongside our closest allies. Aujourd'hui, je vois des élus venant d'un bout à l'autre du Canada, de Saint-Jean's à Terre-Neuve et Labrador, de Victoria en Colombie-Britannique et d'Arviat au Nunavut. Je vois des gardiens des droits et libertés garantis par la Charte canadienne. En tant que roi, je tiens à vous remercier de vous mettre au service de vos compatriotes, d'un bout ou l'autre de ce grand et beau pays. You speak for your communities, representing an incredible richness of cultures, languages, and perspectives. We owe it to this generation and those who succeed us to think and act for the greater good of all. While the world faces unprecedented challenges, generating uncertainties across the continents with regards to peace and stability, economics and climate change, your communities have the skills and determination to bring a wealth of solutions. En encourageant la collaboration et en tenant des débats respectueux et constructifs, vous permettrez à ce gouvernement d'agir de façon audacieuse et juste pour le bien des Canadiens et des Canadiennes. It has been nearly 70 years since the Sovereign first opened Parliament. In the time since, Canada has dramatically changed, repatriating its constitution, achieving full independence, and witnessing immense growth. Canada has embraced its British, French, and Indigenous roots and become a bold, ambitious, innovative country that is bilingual, truly multicultural, and committed to reconciliation. The Crown has for so long been a symbol of unity for Canada. It also represents stability and continuity from the past to the present. As it should, it stands proudly as a symbol of Canada today, in all her richness and dynamism. When my dear late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, opened a new Canadian Parliament in 1957, the Second World War remained a fresh, painful memory. The Cold War was intensifying. Freedom and democracy were under threat. Canada was emerging as a growing economic power and a force for peace in the world. In the decades since, history has been punctuated by epoch-making events: the Vietnam War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the start of the War on Terror. Today, Canada faces another critical moment. Democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, self-determination, and freedom are values which Canadians hold dear, and ones which the government is determined to protect. The system of open global trade that, while not perfect, has helped to deliver prosperity for Canadians for decades, is changing. Canada's relationships with partners are also changing. Il nous faut confronter la réalité. Depuis la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, notre monde n'a jamais été aussi dangereux et instable. Le Canada fait face à des défis qui, dans nos vies, sont sans précédent. Many Canadians are feeling anxious and worried about the drastically changing world around them. Fundamental change is always unsettling. Yet this moment is also an incredible opportunity, an opportunity for renewal, an opportunity to think big and to act bigger, an opportunity for Canada to embark on the largest transformation of its economy since the Second World War. A confident Canada, which has welcomed new Canadians, including from some of the most tragic global conflict zones, can seize this opportunity by recognizing that all Canadians can give themselves far more than any foreign power on any continent can ever take away. And that by staying true to Canadian values, Canada can build new alliances and a new economy that serves all Canadians. The Prime Minister and the President of the United States, for example, have begun defining a new economic and security relationship between Canada and the United States, rooted in mutual respect and founded on common interests, to deliver transformational benefits for both sovereign nations. Simultanément, le gouvernement œuvre à renforcer ses relations avec des partenaires commerciaux et des alliés fiables. Sachons que le Canada possède ce dont notre monde a besoin et défend les valeurs que ce monde respecte. Le Canada est prêt à bâtir une coalition de nations qui partagent ces valeurs, qui croient en la coopération internationale et le libre-échange de biens, de services et d'idées. Dans ce monde nouveau, qui évolue à un rythme frénétique, le Canada tracera la voie à suivre. La démonstration en sera faite dès juin, quand le Canada présidera le sommet du G7. The government is guided by its conviction that the economy is only truly strong when it serves everyone. Many Canadians are struggling to get ahead. The government is responding, reducing middle-class taxes and saving two-income families up to $840 a year. It will cut the GST on homes at or under $1 million for first-time home buyers, delivering savings of up to $50,000. And it will lower the GST on homes between $1 million and $1.5 million. Le gouvernement assurera la pérennité de programmes qui permettent déjà aux familles d'économiser des milliers de dollars par année, notamment ceux pour les garderies et l'assurance médicaments. À ces progrès s'ajoute l'élargissement du régime canadien de soins dentaires, qui sera bientôt accessible à environ 8 millions de Canadiens et de Canadiennes, leur permettant d'économiser plus de $800 par année en moyenne. The government's overarching goal, its core mission, is to build the strongest economy in the G7. That starts with creating one Canadian economy out of 13. Internal barriers to trade and labour mobility cost Canada as much as $200 billion each year. The government will introduce legislation to remove all remaining federal barriers to internal trade and labour mobility by Canada Day. Les premiers ministres de plusieurs provinces et territoires ont déjà pris des mesures pour éliminer les obstacles au commerce intérieur. Le gouvernement va s'appuyer sur ces progrès pour créer, d'ici la fête du Canada, un réel système de libre-échange à travers le pays. Il s'agit d'efforts essentiels pour permettre au Canada de réaliser tout son potentiel économique, mais cela reste insuffisant. To build Canada strong, the government is working closely with provinces, territories, and Indigenous peoples to identify and catalyse projects of national significance. Projects that will connect Canada, that will deepen Canada's ties with the world, and that will create high-paying jobs for generations. Given the pace of change and the scale of opportunities, speed is of the essence. Through the creation of a new major federal project office, the time needed to approve a project will be reduced from 5 years to 2, all while upholding Canada's world-leading environmental standards and its constitutional obligations to Indigenous peoples. The government will also strike cooperation agreements with every interested province and territory within 6 months to realise its goal of one project, one review. When Canadians come together, Canada builds things that last. Éliminer ces obstacles qui freinent l'économie canadienne permettra l'avènement d'une nouvelle ère de croissance grâce à laquelle le Canada va non seulement surmonter des guerres commerciales, mais en émerger plus fort que jamais. Cela lui permettra de devenir une superpuissance en matière d'énergie verte et conventionnelle, de bâtir une stratégie industrielle qui rendra le Canada plus compétitif à l'international, tout en luttant contre les changements climatiques, de bâtir des centaines de milliers de bonnes carrières dans les métiers spécialisés, et donc de faire du Canada une plaque tournante pour la science et l'innovation. Critically, the government will undertake a series of measures to help double the rate of home building while creating an entirely new housing industry, using Canadian technology, Canadian skilled workers, and Canadian lumber. The government will introduce measures to deliver affordable homes by creating Build Canada homes. This mission-driven organisation will act to accelerate the development of new affordable housing. It will invest in the growth of the prefabricated and modular housing industry, and it will provide significant financing to affordable home builders. The government will make the housing market work better, including by cutting municipal development charges in half for all multi-unit housing. The government will drive supply up to bring housing costs down. To be truly strong, Canada must be secure. To that end, the government will introduce legislation to enhance security at Canada's borders. Law enforcement and intelligence agencies will have new tools to stop the flow of fentanyl and its precursors. The Canada Border Services Agency will be given new powers to examine goods destined for export, to prevent the transport of illegal and stolen products, including cars. Le gouvernement protégera la souveraineté du Canada en rebâtissant, réarmant et réinvestissant dans les forces armées canadiennes. Il stimulera l'industrie militaire canadienne en prenant part au plan Réarm Europe et contribuera ainsi avec des partenaires européens à la sécurité transatlantique. Et il investira pour renforcer sa présence dans le Nord, alors que cette région, qui est partie intégrante de la nation canadienne, fait face à de nouvelles menaces. The government will discharge its duty to protect Canadians and their sovereign rights from wherever challenges may come at home or abroad. To keep communities safe, the government will hire 1,000 more RCMP personnel. It will change firearms licensing and strengthen enforcement of yellow and red flag laws. Weapons licenses for those convicted of intimate partner violence and those subject to protection orders will be revoked. Through the deployment of scanners, drones, and helicopters, additional personnel, and canine teams, the government will stem the tide of illegal guns and drugs across the border. It will take these steps while protecting the rights of law-abiding gun owners and Indigenous peoples' long-standing hunting traditions. The government will bring a renewed focus on car theft and home invasions by toughening the criminal code to make bail harder to get for repeat offenders charged with committing these crimes, along with human trafficking and drug smuggling. During this time of great change, Canadians are uniting behind what makes Canada unique. La langue française et la culture québécoise sont au cœur de l'identité canadienne. Elles définissent le pays que les Canadiens, les Canadiennes et moi aimons tant. Le Canada est un pays où l'on respecte et célèbre les langues officielles et les langues autochtones. Le gouvernement est déterminé à protéger les institutions qui font rayonner ces cultures et cette identité dans le monde entier, comme CBC Radio-Canada. Protéger ce qui nous donne accès à des aliments frais, sains et de qualité, les producteurs agricoles, et protéger la gestion de l'offre. Nature is core to Canada's identity. In 2022, Canada convened COP15 in Montreal, which concluded with 196 countries striking a historic agreement to protect 30% of their lands and 30% of waters by 2030. To this end, the government will protect more of Canada's nature than ever before through the creation of new national parks, national urban parks, marine protected areas, and other conservation initiatives. The government will always protect the rights and freedoms that the Charter guarantees for every Canadian. The government will be a reliable partner to Indigenous peoples, upholding its fundamental commitment to advancing reconciliation. Central to this commitment is the creation of long-term wealth and prosperity with Indigenous peoples. For that reason, the government will double the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Programme from $5 billion to $10 billion, enabling more Indigenous communities to become owners of major projects. As Canada moves forward with nation-building projects, the government will always be firmly guided by the principle of free, prior, and informed consent. Canada's immigration system has long been a source of pride for Canadians and of dynamism for the economy. The government is dedicated to rebuilding the trust of Canadians in immigration by restoring balance to the system. Le gouvernement instaurera une limite sur le nombre de travailleurs étrangers temporaires et d'étudiants internationaux, établissant un plafond qui, à partir de 2027, sera en deçà de 5% de la population canadienne. Simultanément, il attirera les meilleurs talents dans le monde pour bâtir l'économie. Et il fera savoir aux Canadiens et aux Canadiennes qui travaillent à l'étranger que s'ils songent à revenir au pays, il n'y a pas de moment plus propice pour le faire. Dans toutes ces actions, le gouvernement sera guidé par une nouvelle discipline fiscale. Dépenser moins pour que les Canadiens puissent investir plus. Day-to-day government spending, the government's operating budget, has been growing by 9% every year. The government will introduce measures to bring it below 2%. Transfers to provinces, territories, or individuals will be maintained. The government will balance its operating budget over the next 3 years by cutting waste, capping the public service, ending duplication, and deploying technology to improve public sector productivity. In parallel, the government will take a series of measures to catalyse new investment, to create better jobs and higher incomes for Canadians. The scale of the government's initiative will match the challenges of our times and the ambitions of Canadians. Honourable Senators, members of the House of Commons, when my dear late mother addressed your predecessors 7 decades ago, she said that in that age and against the backdrop of international affairs, no nation could live unto itself. It is a source of great pride that in the following decades, Canada has continued to set an example to the world in her conduct and values as a force for good. À vous et à l'ensemble du peuple canadien, mon épouse et moi-même adressons nos sincères remerciements pour cet accueil des plus chaleureux. As the anthem reminds us, the true North is indeed strong and free. Members of the House of Commons, you will be asked to appropriate the funds to carry out the services and expenditures authorised by Parliament. May you honour the profound trust bestowed upon you by Canadians. And may God bless and guide you in all your duties.
Fantastic stuff. That was King Charles opening States Parliament in Canada, the 45th time. A really, really expansive speech and one loaded with politics. Didn't quite mention the T word, didn't quite mention Donald Trump, but you could almost feel Donald Trump's presence in that room as policy was laid out, Canada's fresh challenges with its neighbours, underlining the importance of self-determination. King Charles started on an emotive arc, talking about the deep sense of pride and pleasure, a recognition of a shared history, while deepening my own understanding of your nation. My love of Canada spread out over half a century, and I think this is a wonderful sentiment here. Every time I come to Canada, a little more of it seeps into my bloodstream and into my heart. Beautiful choice of words there. Talks about the 80th anniversary of VE Day, and in fact, in about half an hour's time, the King and Queen will lay wreaths at the National War Memorial there. Talk about the fighting of soldiers who fought and died alongside allies at D-Day and also at Ypres, and rattle off a series of other battles together of comrades. But then the politics began in earnest. I thought it was utterly fascinating. I'm still joined in the studio by the former Attorney General, Sir Michael Ellis. Sir Michael, there, we're just seeing live pictures on our screens now, standing ovation for the King and the Queen. It was, I think, a magnificent speech.
Yes.
It was one that really was on a tightrope of politics. Was it offensive to Donald Trump? Did it tick all the right boxes? What were your main takeaways from
Well,
this?
here, Martin, isn't it just an absolutely grade A example of the power of monarchy, the magic, as Badgett spoke of, the magic of monarchy, that special impact that only a king, only a sovereign can bring to an occasion. This occasion, replete as it is with ceremony, but with symbolism. Everything is about symbolism, and the meaning of what we're seeing here, the presence of the Indigenous peoples of Canada in the Senate building, this historic occasion. But that speech was very powerful. I thought it was a brilliantly delivered speech. It was a brilliantly written speech, and it was powerful in its messaging. And it was made more powerful by the fact that it didn't have to be crude or overly direct. It didn't have to be a sort of a yaboo sucks to Donald Trump. What it was immensely powerful in the subtlety but the clarity of that messaging. And when he spoke, His Majesty spoke of the unique identity of Canada. You understood, I think, very early on in his speech what he meant by that. It's not the same as the United States of America. It is different. It has its own identity. It has its own history. And he spoke of the repatriation of the Canadian Constitution that happened in 1982, where total, absolute authority over everything became vested in Canada. There was no formal connection any longer with the Westminster Parliament, which a process that had started from the British North America Act in 1867, when the Canadians had been given, if you like, independence from Britain. But he spoke, he then led on in those words to talk about self-determination.
Yes.
And the Canadian values of self-determination, which he said the Canadian government was determined to protect. And we can only allude there, subtle though it is, but still quite clear, allude to the fact that it's the self-determination of the Canadian people that they be an independent nation and not the 51st state of the American Union.
And at that point, the politics was flowing, was mainlining through this speech. And it was talking of a new era of fresh challenges. Many Canadians feeling anxious about the world around them now. We face another critical moment in our history. And this was clearly talking about Donald Trump. And at that point, you and I, Sir Michael, were looking at each other thinking, I wonder how Donald Trump's going to react to this. But then I thought masterfully, the speech pivoted and it started throwing Donald Trump a lot of constitutional, political and tangible biscuits.
Yes, it did. And in that sense, it was an excellent derivative of what you've been saying, which is it was a reflection of the sovereignty and independence of Canada, but at the same time, saying to his audience, Mark Carney, his words, of course, saying to that audience that we're going to do some of the things that President Trump and the Americans want us to do. And, of course, he alluded to controlling their borders from the drugs, from fentanyl and so on, which, of course, President Trump has spoken of as key to his reasoning for why he's been alluding to annexation of Canada because of the drugs, the alleged drugs problem coming from the Canadian border. And to, if you like, to throw a sop to that, Mark Carney has written in that speech, well, we're going to toughen our borders, both in terms of military protection, but also in terms of drug trafficking.
And there were specific policy announcements within this delivered by the King on the opening day of Parliament, the significance of which, Sir Michael, cannot be overestimated. Clearly talking here about enhanced border control. The entire war that broke out around tariffs between Donald Trump and Canada was about you're not controlling your border, you're letting illegal immigrants over the border from the north, you're allowing fentanyl to pour in. We have a terrible problem in the United States, and that's because you're not doing your job controlling your border to the north. Today, specific policy announcements. We will enhance our borders, new powers to stop fentanyl, tick. Donald Trump's team will be delighted at that. Helicopter teams, canine teams.
Increased border security.
Increased border security. Officers to stem the tide of guns and drugs across the border, and an end to human trafficking and gun running. That would be music to Donald Trump's
Absolutely.
ears.
So, if you like, it's that dual messaging. It's that very clever, sophisticated, carefully delivered, carefully enunciated dual messaging, which is this is a sovereign power which deeply respects its independence and very much wants to continue that and intends to continue that. But recognising that there may have been an issue on the border. Fentanyl should not be crossing international borders, even if it is in smaller quantities than the Americans have assumed, and they're going to do something about it. And so that, if you like, is a sop to the American demands of closer border protection. It's recognising that there has been a problem there. It ticks that box. But at the same time, that speech was very carefully crafted to indicate that we're not going to tolerate any infringement of our sovereignty. The King spoke there about how Canada and Canadians give themselves more than any foreign power can take away. And one doesn't need to be an expert to determine there what actually was being alluded to. No foreign power can take away from Canada what they themselves give to themselves as a sovereign power. So I think His Majesty was very cleverly saying there, hands off Canada.
Yeah.
But at the same time recognising that the Canadians will have to control their borders when it comes to illegal drugs and the security of borders in terms of illegal immigration.
And I have to say, before the speech, Sir Michael, we said every word will be poured over, and we're doing that now.
Yeah.
I think it was a masterful balance of oiling the feathers, of the preening, from at the same time letting him know who's the boss. The Prime Minister and the President of the United States have a new deal, rooted in mutual respect.
That's it.
We heard. So recognising that there needs to be a compromise, but saying firmly, hands off. So, Michael, a lot of people said before the start of this speech, was the King being dragged into politics as a political pawn? I hate to use the cliche. He played that like a king. I think it was masterful. I think he did everything. I think he ticked every single box correctly.
It was a beautifully written speech. Yeah. It was very well delivered. Remember that when you're delivering a speech of that significance, where people are literally parsing every word carefully, even intonation can make a difference. And I think I heard the King emphasising when he used the phrase self-determination. Yeah. And there was a particularly... That stamped it. Yeah. And he's saying there, the Canadians' self-determination, their rights to self-determine their own progress, which we of course have spoken about in terms of the Falklands and in terms of Gibraltar. Every people have the right to self-determination. It is, if you like, a God-given right, not only a law-given right. And the Canadians have clearly determined that they wish to be an independent nation and not the 51st state of the Union. But it has been subtle. It hasn't been insulting. There's no reason why anyone should take offence about anything that had been said. In fact, it's recognised that what President Trump alluded to about, as we say, the controlled drugs and the harm that fentanyl and other drugs do, that's going to be a problem that's recognised. Another thing, I think, Martin, that really will please the Americans is that a lot of that speech, including some of it that you heard in the King's very good French, I thought.
I was about to say about that. As a man who just about manages to order a beer or ask where the beach is, it was a splendid display of respect, the intonation, and that matters.
Yeah, it does. Oh, it really does. And some of the most impactful things the King's done in his short reign so far, and, long may he reign, I would emphasise, over us, and over Canada. But the reality is the impact that he has made when he spoke German to the Germans and Italian in Italy and French, I mean, they absolutely love it. And you do not see that in political leaders, certainly not UK political leaders. That language skill is not something that many of our political leaders have. But that's something, of course, the late Queen was able to do and His Majesty can do with aplomb. Another thing I think that the Americans will be pleased about is that Mark Carney there made sure in that speech that there was an allusion to closer economic cooperation with their American neighbours. And so what really matters, I think, to President Trump is the economy, building up a strong economy, and the Canadians want to help them do that.
And you and I both locked eyes when, just small words, Canadian lumber. Why would a king mention Canadian lumber? The answer is simple. Lumber was a direct target of very aggressive tariffs by Donald Trump. We don't need your lumber, and it's a key part of the Canadian economy. Of course, it grows a huge amount of trees, excellent timber. Yeah. So it was mentioned. those little words have significance beyond their own meaning because it plays into the politics of cheaper housing, of keeping trade partnerships going. And I just think it was majestic.
It really was. And majestic's the right word, of course. But, you know, you're right. Lumber is a crucial part of the Canadian economy. But it's something that has been an avenue of attack by President Trump. And that's why he's placed large tariffs on it. But so you can see a recognition there, definitely, in the speech that Mark Carney and his team have drafted for His Majesty to ensure that it ticks every possible box. And, you know, I think we can be really proud of the King here because he has shown... I wonder, I have to say, I wonder whether the Australians will want, or the New Zealanders, our Kiwi friends, will want the King to come and open one of their parliaments soon, because it's not an abrogation of their sovereignty, it's a reaffirmation of their sovereignty, because he is the king of those countries, 15 realms. And I think many of them will be thinking to themselves, actually, it wouldn't do... Many of those prime ministers will think, it wouldn't do us any harm to have the king come and open our parliament for the first time in 50 years again.
Except, of course, the Republicans might choke on their quinoa.
Oh, they'll be very unhappy at the moment.
It is. But in terms, the day is not over, so they're probably just having a quick pit stop now. At 5 p.m, the King and the Queen, they leave Parliament and walk to the War Memorial. They're meeting the public on the way, you know, getting up close and personal.
I think.
A walkabout before that symbolic, totemic laying of a wreath at the National War Memorial. Around about 5:05 until 5:25, and alluded to in that speech there, Sir Michael, just reaffirming constantly historic ties of battle, of war, of comradeship.
We'll never forget that, and we shouldn't forget it, and certainly the monarchy is part of that memory. It's, if you like, one of its functions is to act as the indelible, everlasting memory of those who fell in battle in the service of king and country. And of course, despite, some people might say, the enormous passage of time, His Majesty referred there as King of Canada to those famous battles of World War I. He actually adumbrated them. He spoke about Juno Beach, he spoke about Ypres, he spoke about Dieppe, he spoke about Vimy Ridge. Those battles and others where Canadians fell in the service of their king and country. And that won't be allowed to be forgotten. And His Majesty is going to go and pay his respects shortly at the Canadian War Memorial. These pictures of His Majesty planting a tree, I think in the grounds of Rideau Hall yesterday, which is the sort of Canadian government house, and a rather exotic tree, I believe that was. It looks as though it's been alive for a few years already, I must say. But I think that was a really important speech that His Majesty eloquently delivered in French and English, and with, of course, Mark Carney attentively listening on there, sitting near the King. And in a way, as we said before, that the Prime Minister of this country doesn't get to get so close to the sovereign.
And some of it was quite granular domestic politics, about housing targets, about sustainability. Of course, climate change, tick. Indigenous peoples, tick. It is the King. It is King Charles. He loves that kind of stuff. But nevertheless, for Mark Carney, a new premier, to have a king coming in and ostensibly rubber stamping his domestic policy, again, you can't buy that.
He has played a blinder. Actually, Carney has played a blinder. And many people may have said to him, we don't know, of course, but many people may have said to him shortly after his election as Prime Minister, oh, well, this hasn't happened in 50 years. Maybe it's fallen into abeyance. You can't really invite the king to open Parliament. It's been such a long time since it's happened. You know, he would have had to make a decision. And leadership is about making decisions. And he has decided, I'm going to invite him. I don't want that custom to fall into abeyance. I want us to keep it alive. And he's recognised, I think, the politician in him has recognised that that has a political value. And, of course, you know, it's not the King's views here. The King is expressing the views of his Canadian Prime Minister in the same way. That's why the late Queen... of blessed memory, she would have no doubt delivered speeches during her time where she was nationalising the railways and privatising the railways, and it was about what her Prime Minister wanted.
So, Michael, we have a quick 45 seconds before the end of the hour. I hate to lower the tone. I think the King played an absolute blinder today. He stuck it in the top corner. It's marvellous.
I agree, absolutely, and I think we couldn't have asked for anything more. I think it was a rip-roaring success, and I think it'll be impactful on the political and diplomatic circle now, and I think it should help American-Canadian relations. It certainly strengthens the power of His Majesty on the international arena.
So, Michael, Alice, I've greatly enjoyed your company this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us on GBNews. A really tremendous occasion. Of course, plenty more coming in the next hour, including the very latest from Liverpool. And we'll have a bit of politics. Nigel Farage, he's back. But first, it's your weather, and here's Alex Deakin.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon. Yes, it is time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Overall, tomorrow looks quite a bit drier and quite a bit brighter than today, but still there will be a few showers around. Not quite so chilly either tomorrow. It's been a bit dull and dismal across a good chunk of the UK. Still plenty of outbreaks of rain and drizzle around this evening. Even a few heavy downpours might even catch a thunderstorm, generally pushing away out into the North Sea. But this line of rain likely to persist through the night across parts of East Anglia, the Midlands, up towards Wales. And again, some heavy bursts mixed in with that. A few showers in the far north of Scotland, much of central and eastern Scotland staying dry and clear through the night, temperatures dipping down into single figures. Quite a mild night in the south. Still that zone of heavier rain over some central parts of England and Wales early on, and still a few showers coming into northern Scotland during tomorrow. The odd one getting into the Highlands first thing, but much of eastern, southern Scotland a sunny start to Wednesday. A brighter day for Northern Ireland, although still predominantly cloudy in the morning, and then there's cloudier zones through parts of England and Wales, still providing some outbreaks of rain, which could still be on the heavy side, particularly over the Midlands and mid-Wales first thing. That'll slowly push south and introduce a few showers down across the southeast of England from mid-morning onwards. Then we'll see a few heavy showers breaking out over maybe northeast England and southeast Scotland. But for many places, particularly in the west, it's a much drier, much brighter day tomorrow with some decent spells of sunshine and feeling a bit warmer as well. The winds will be lighter and temperatures close to a touch above average across the southeast. We might sneak over 20 degrees Celsius. Getting warmer still on Thursday, but as you can see, for many it's going to be a soggy start. A lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. That should become more confined to Scotland and Northern Ireland, always staying quite grey and murky in many western areas, but parts of the Midlands and eastern England will probably brighten up and turning a little bit warmer as well, although not feeling much warmer with the rain and the wind across Scotland and Northern Ireland.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from gbnews.com. The A82 at Torlundi, near Inverlochy Castle, is closed due to a road traffic incident. Road users should follow signed diversions and expect longer than usual journey times. The M4 westbound is closed from junction 30 Cardiff Gate to junction 32 Corriton for planned maintenance. Diversions are in place. In Hampshire, an overturned vehicle on the A303 eastbound has resulted in one-lane closure, with expected delays of around 15 minutes. And on the trains, there's disruption on the Elizabeth line between London Paddington and Heathrow Airport, as well as on the Great Western Railway. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Someone is going to win the biggest prize package to date, and that someone could be you, driving away in this Elnag Baron 560 motorhome. It has plenty of room for your family of four, comes complete with kitchen, bathroom and all the space you'll need for life on the road. Plus, we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 125. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK.
It is believed the driver of the Ford Galaxy car involved in this incident was able to follow an ambulance onto Water Street.
Yeah, this afternoon, Merseyside Police has said that there were a total of 65 confirmed casualties following the incident in Liverpool yesterday, and more than 50 people, including children, were treated in different hospitals, with 11 still in stable care. We'll be on the ground live from Liverpool for all of the very latest updates. And King Charles officially opens Canada's Parliament, and the King says Canada is facing unprecedented challenges in what he sees as a more dangerous world since the Second World War. And earlier today, Nigel Farage blasted Sir Keir Starmer as dismal, unpatriotic and frankly pointless. Will the Prime Minister have the guts to go toe-to-toe with Farage in the rumble in the Red Wall? And that's all coming up in your next hour. Well, the show, it's a pleasure to have your company. We've had 2 hours of pomp and ceremony on GB News today. If just joining us, King Charles just opened Canadian State Parliament in a meticulously delivered speech, one that trod a very fine line between protecting Canada's sovereignty as an independent nation and a member of the Commonwealth, QED, hands off Donald Trump, and at the same time addressing the notions that Trump wants something back from Canada: border control, human trafficking, fentanyl production and gun running across the border. It was a fascinating speech, packed full of detail. And talking of which, this morning, Nigel Farage, he's back with a bang, threw the gauntlet down to Sir Keir Starmer, challenged him to a one-on-one debate. But he said, I don't want to wait 4 years, I'd like to do it now, and I'll meet you in a working men's club in the Red Wall, perhaps surrounded by former coal miners, perhaps people like my dad, and let them ask the questions. What do you think would happen in that scenario? I think it's astonishing that Nigel Farage would throw down the gauntlet in such a dramatic way in ostensibly what was the backyard, the home turf of the Labour Party just maybe 2 electoral cycles ago. Now there's a feeling that Nigel Farage wants to take it to the battlefield, take it to the debate with the Prime Minister in the Red Wall. Do you think that will ever happen? Is that about as likely to happen as me flapping my arms and flying to the moon? But what a spectacle it would be, the rumble in the Red Wall. Who do you think would win? Get in touch usual ways. gbnews.com/ is your say is the way to do it. But now it's your headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Martin, thank you, and a very good evening to you.
The top story tonight. Police say it is a miracle that there weren't more serious injuries after a car ploughed into crowds at Liverpool's Premier League victory parade. The King has said he is deeply shocked and saddened, with the Prince and Princess of Wales also calling it a heartbreaking end to what should have been a joyful day. Princess Anne visited Liverpool this afternoon to meet emergency crews and praise their remarkable bravery. At this stage, we know 11 people are in hospital, all in a stable condition, and are said to be recovering well, according to Merseyside Police. While speaking earlier, Detective Chief Superintendent Karen Jondrill said that officers are still continuing to analyse footage of the crash.
We have arrested a 53-year-old man from West Derby on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving offences and driving whilst unfit through drugs. He remains in custody where he is being interviewed. We have a total of 65 confirmed casualties, many of whom required hospital treatment, and our officers and family liaison officers are providing specialist support to a large number of these victims.
And the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, also says the country stands with the city of Liverpool after what he described as scenes of joy turned to devastation.
All stands together and the whole country stands with Liverpool. I'd like to thank the first responders who did a fantastic job last night and continue to do so. There's now an ongoing investigation. I'm being kept updated, talking frequently to the Mayor, Steve Rotherham. But as I say, my thoughts and the thoughts of the whole country will be with everybody in Liverpool today.
Turning to Canada, and King Charles has made history, becoming the first British monarch in nearly 50 years to deliver Canada's speech from the throne. Well, his visit follows an invite from Prime Minister Mark Carney, seen as a pointed response to Donald Trump's claim that Canada could become America's 51st state. Speaking in Ottawa, he praised the country's transformation since his mother's visit in 1977, calling it truly multicultural, independent and rooted in British, French and Indigenous heritage. And His Majesty also recalled past global crises, from the Cold War to the War on Terror, and warned that Canada faces new threats today.
Today, Canada faces another critical moment. Democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, self-determination and freedom are values which Canadians hold dear, and ones which the government is determined to protect.
In other news, vote reform, get reform. The words of Nigel Farage as he doubled down on a press conference in central London earlier. The Reform UK leader backed reinstating the winter fuel payment and scrapping both net zero targets and asylum seeker hotels. He also said lifting the two-child benefit cap would be the, quote, right thing to do. Nigel Farage paid tribute to victims of the Liverpool attack too and turned his fire on Sir Keir Starmer. He's pitching reform as the only real opposition to a Labour government.
Now, they, of course, right now are absolutely terrified of reform. And if you think the Conservatives had a bad day on May the 1st, arguably, Labour did even worse. We completely wiped them out. This government is off to the worst start of any government since Eden and the Suez Crisis in 1956. They are collapsing in terms of support. Their response to us is just to turn on the Labour lie machine.
British sanctions are disrupting Vladimir Putin's Arctic ambitions, halting the expansion of his nuclear-powered icebreaker fleet. A Russian repair dock has been stranded in the Mediterranean after the tugboat meant to tow it was hit with UK sanctions. On visits to Norway and Iceland, the Foreign Secretary David Lammy is reviewing how to counter Russian threats to undersea cables and infrastructure. The UK is also teaming up with Iceland to explore using AI to detect hostile activity in the Arctic. And the government is pledging 120,000 new apprenticeships and training spots across England in a bid to upskill British workers and reduce migration. Construction, healthcare and engineering are top of the list, with ministers promising tens of thousands of roles before the next general election. Up to 45,000 of the new places will be paid for by raising the fee employers face when hiring foreign workers. It's part of a major push to boost homegrown talent, with ministers saying the move will strengthen the workforce here at home and support key industries across the country. You're up to date with all the top stories just after 5 o'clock. I'll be back in half an hour. Now, though, it's over to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Sam. And without further ado, let's head now straight to Liverpool, where our GB News reporter Charlie Peters has some breaking news on the Home Secretary. Charlie, over to you.
Yes, Martin, Yvette Cooper is set to visit Liverpool this evening, accompanied by Deputy Chief Constable Chris Crean of Merseyside Police and also Steve Rotherham, the Metro Mayor here. She's anticipated to be visiting the cordon where I am now and will also be engaging with many of the first responders who saved lives here yesterday evening as the Liverpool Football Club Premier League Trophy Parade descended into chaos. What was an electric atmosphere, in the words of Jenny Sims of Merseyside Police, swiftly became a harrowing and devastating event. And the Home Secretary's visit follows after the Princess Royal also visited the injured in hospital here. She visited the Royal Liverpool University Hospital this morning to meet staff who treated casualties caught up in this tragic incident, and the Princess Royal has also shared her heartfelt condolences to those affected here in Liverpool by that event yesterday. And we heard from the Assistant Chief Constable Jenny Sims that there were some 65 casualties from yesterday's event, 50 presenting to hospital, 11 remain in hospital, though they are said to be in a stable condition and recovering well. We also heard from Detective Chief Superintendent Karen Jondrill about their ongoing extensive investigation into a 53-year-old man who was detained, arrested yesterday, they say, on suspicion of multiple counts of attempted murder, though the police won't say how many counts, dangerous driving, but also driving unfit through drugs. Now, speaking to police sources earlier today, we were told that the Galaxy, the Ford Galaxy that crossed into Water Street, did so having crossing a vehicle barrier put in place. This area, Water Street, was part of the cordoning operation that was put in place, and Jenny Sims told us earlier that there was a robust traffic management plan. But we understand that the vehicle barrier, which this Ford Galaxy was driven on by that 53-year-old, was overcome by virtue of it tailing an ambulance right behind the ambulance that then was allowed to pass through as it was responding to reports of a suspected heart attack by someone attending the parade here just above the Strand in Liverpool city centre. Now, the blockade here, the vehicle barrier, we understand that that was being organised by the event management team involved in that parade, not by the police. But they have until lunchtime tomorrow to continue questioning that 53-year-old man who has been detained on suspicion of multiple counts of attempted murder, dangerous driving and being unfit to drive through drugs.
Thank you, Charlie Peters, for bringing us up to speed from the ground there in Liverpool. Thank you. Now, a short while ago, His Majesty the King Charles delivered his highly anticipated historic speech for the opening of the country's 45th Parliament, where he made history as only the second British monarch to do so. And we've got some live pictures now because the King and the Queen have now advanced onto the National War Memorial Cemetery in Ontario, Ottawa, beg your pardon, and they're about to lay a wreath, marking, of course, that historic bond between Canada and the United Kingdom, fought in wars that were detailed in that speech earlier on, going back from Ypres, from the D-Day landings, marking the historic bond as the last post sounds out. last post never ever fails to stir the soul, does it? Wherever you hear it, it just reminds you of historic bonds between nations, historic bonds reforged today as the King and the Queen opened Parliament in Canada. Let's bring in my next guest now. I'm delighted to be joined by the Royal commentator, Helena Chard. Helena, remembering kinship, remembering comradeship, remembering the fallen is a key part of any foreign trip for the royal family, and particularly poignant today after that speech in Parliament where those historic bonds were, in a sense, reforged, but an event that wasn't without its controversy, perhaps. The man who was present yet absent, if you like, Donald Trump, hovering over proceedings, talking about Canadians perhaps feeling fresh challenges, more anxious than ever.
Hello. I mean, yes, it's what an extraordinary event. I mean, absolutely amazing to see King Charles, as always, on top form, doing what he does best, centre stage. Yes, it's a very fine political line, but, you know, it's incredible. He looks incredibly well. Let's just say that as well. He really does. He's got full colour. I cannot believe that they're there for sort of under 24 hours, but he is determined. He is, you know, he follows in his mother's footsteps, and he wouldn't have missed this for the world. Everyone's saying, gosh, he could have done it online, but it's, you know, this is him being there, and he did not falter. I mean, obviously, to remember that this speech he was really the orator. He did not write this speech, but I mean, goodness me, opening the 45th Parliament, yes, all the pomp and glory. He was, you know, given everything, the full military works. I mean, we do know he didn't wear the crown, but this, you know, it's in a way unprecedented, and it obviously does send the message that Canada is reaffirming its ties with the crown. It just, you know, King Charles obviously applauding diversity, democracy, global trade, all the rest of it. You can see how he was there giving this speech. I mean, some of it you'd almost think that he'd written. You know, I think as well, remember, it finished on the true north is both strong and free, which is completely states everything. And obviously with the Canada hosting the G7 summit coming up in Italy, you know, the whole thing is about building the strongest Canada possible. You know, King Charles obviously treading that fine political line, never publicly commenting on Trump's repeated talk of making Canada the 51st state. But his speech obviously was closely watched by everybody, Canadians who are anxious about what's happening, obviously knowing the borders. So I just, you know, I would just say that there is going to be this, well, as Carney would say, he's incredibly bright, as is King Charles. He's vowing to oversee the biggest transformation of Canada's economy since the Second World War. And I know that I think they want to be a superpower in green energy, which obviously resonates with King Charles, and a turning point in science and innovation.
You know, Helena, it started out emotively. King Charles said, my love of Canada spread out over half a century. Every time I come to Canada, a little more of it seeped into my bloodstream and into my heart. But he swiftly moved on to the politics. And of course, the political anvil that Carney's premiership was forged on was beating Donald Trump, saying, get your hands off our country. The Liberal Party was destined to be politically eviscerated until Donald Trump was elected and started having desires on Canada as the 51st state of the United States of America. Mark Carney came in and many people would say saved Canada from that fate. And today, King Charles was drawn in. The political language was very, very clear, talking about many Canadians feeling anxious about the world around them. Another critical moment in our history. Self-determination, fresh challenges with our neighbours, but then masterfully, I thought, pivoted. And the speech contained key elements which would keep Republicans and Donald Trump happy, talking about enforced borders, new powers to stop fentanyl getting into America from Canada, helicopter teams, canine teams, officers to stem the tide of guns and drugs across the border, to end human trafficking and gun running. And at a masterstroke, Donald Trump's ego, if you like, his desires, his demands were satiated. It was the king. On that political tightrope, Helena Chard, I think, performing a perfect balancing act.
He absolutely, absolutely perfect balancing act. Doesn't he always when he's centre stage? I mean, I just think he has done a great job, and I believe, you know, the feeling of Canada is not alone in this fight does filter through, along with the symbolic gestures that we see continuously when seeing King Charles at any events, and small things like him sitting on the wooden chair during the Commonwealth. I just think this has been great, and I have to say the ceremonial side has been tremendous. But a delicate tightrope. I don't feel he's stepped into the political terrain, and I just think, he's also sort of issuing the message in a way about the proud, resilient country. And I do feel in my heart that he is applauding the diversity, the multicultural, the democracy, and there we are. I mean, he gave that speech impeccably, as he always does, speaking French. And he's aware there's no president at the moment, but Carney very bright. And as I say, I cannot believe that he has flown out. We know that he's having his cancer treatment, but it just shows his tenacity, how he wanted to be there, and wants to be part of this. He wants everyone to feel together. And yeah, he's there. So incredible to see. I will dissect that speech shortly. I haven't watched it enough, really, to go into it.
It was very good. And Helena, the King and the Queen now will make their way towards Ottawa Airport. They're believed to be leaving the country around about 20 minutes' time before 10 to 6. Believed to be taking off. We'll cross that live as it happens. A real whistle-stop tour, a whirlwind tour. And isn't it nice at last to see countries abroad not trying to say, let's get the Republic out. Let's have a vote and let's end British rule. Canada fully embracing its sovereign heritage. Beautiful stuff, Helena Chard. Thank you for joining us on... Well done. Cheers. Speak to you again soon. Thank you. Coming up next, we'll again the US Republican take of that King's speech in Canada. Was it a snub to Trump, or did Donald Trump get exactly as he wanted today? That's next with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nigel is back.
Good evening.
Unfiltered.
Are these proposals bold enough?
Uncompromising.
Will it bring growth?
Unmissable.
We as a country are brilliant.
Nigel Farage returns next Tuesday from 7 p.m. only on GB News, People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk now? No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there short and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 5:25 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, the King has said that Canada is strong and free following the country's row with Donald Trump over the country's sovereignty. Well, on the second day of his tour of the country, King Charles was welcomed by Canadian Honour Guard and a rendition of God Save the King in the country's capital, Ottawa. But what does it mean for Donald Trump? What does it mean for America? Were they snubbed today? Or actually, did they get a result? Well, let's speak now with the spokesperson for Republicans overseas, Jennifer Ewing. Jennifer, welcome to the show. We've got some live pictures there on our screens of King Charles and Queen Camilla just taking a tour back to the airport. We believe they're taking off around about 25 minutes' time. But Jennifer Ewing, I was really super keen to get your take on some of the politics that was mentioned today quite clearly. Mark Carney using the King, some might say, as a political tool to say, Donald Trump, keep your hands off. On the other hand, though, there were some pretty encouraging words from the Canadian Premier about finally taking back control of that northern border. So in many ways, Donald Trump wasn't there today, but it felt like he was pulling a few political levers.
You're right. And first of all, I agree with your royal commentator. It's incredible that King Charles was able to make the trip, and his pal Mark Carney certainly owes him one. It's so funny, this, the argument between the US and Canada. It all started when the former Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, flew to America and basically over the tariff talks said to President Trump that if we do equal trade, Canada will cease to exist as a country. And President Trump said, well, then you're welcome to become the 51st state. And, what was meant as a joke did not end there. And as we know, Trump carried on. And while it was being seen as a bit of a joke and a troll in America, my Canadian friends, even those who are big Trump supporters, were telling me in the lead up to the election, tell Trump to shut up, because the way it's playing in Canada is Carney's going to end up beating the guy who was ahead, Pierre Poilievre, because people saw it as, defending Canada. So today, I didn't see it as too political. And you're right. Some of the things that were discussed, like the fentanyl at the border, that is the entire reason that Trump was talking about trade negotiations in the beginning is he wanted the border controls. A lot of people, as you know, over 100,000 a year die from fentanyl poisonings. And while the majority of that comes from Mexico, quite a bit of it does come from Canada. So while I don't think King Charles ever thought he'd be using the word fentanyl, I'm glad he did use it. And yeah, we welcome more closed borders.
And it was incredible where, you know, the King Charles was basically reiterating the manifesto pledges of Mark Carney. A lot of them, including no doubt to yourself, Jennifer Ewing, will be music to your ears. Enhanced border control, new powers to stop fentanyl, helicopter teams, canine teams, officers to stem the tide of guns and drugs across the border to end human trafficking and gun running. You're probably saying, yippee, that's all we wanted all along.
Well, you're exactly right. And while I watched the speech, I was talking to my Canadian friend who was saying this is crazy because it's Pierre Poilievre's manifesto as well. You know, the guy from the Conservative Party that lost because of Trump's 51st state joke. So it really doesn't matter in the end whose manifesto it is, as long as they follow through with it. We'll be very grateful.
Well, I'm glad that our King Charles came to Canada and helped secure your northern border. Jennifer Ewing, I know it matters a huge, huge amount to millions of Americans. It's a pleasure to have your company on the show. It's been way too long. Thanks for joining us, spokesperson of Republicans Overseas, Jennifer Ewing. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, just saying that it was an incredible speech, I think, laced with politics, absolutely dripping with politics, and it was quite the sight, quite the sound to see King Charles, if you like, being utilised in that way. But helping defend America, helping defend Canada. And after the break, we're going to have lots and lots of domestic politics because, of course, earlier on, Nigel Farage, that man, he came back, he threw down the gauntlet to Keir Starmer, challenged him to a one-to-one debate, toe-to-toe, in the Red Wall. Will the Prime Minister take Farage up on that challenge? That's coming next. Plenty more to come throughout the rest of the show. But for now, if you're travelling home from work or from school, firstly, stay safe. And secondly, here's your traffic and your travel update, and stick with us.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Good afternoon, this is the latest AI travel news from GBNews.com. A road collision closed the A82 at Torlundy near Inverlochie Castle. Follow diversions and expect longer travel times. The A303 eastbound in Hampshire is delayed with one lane closed due to an overturned vehicle. M4 westbound near Junction 48 at Hendy is closed for maintenance. M6 southbound in Walsall has 20-minute delays between junctions 11 and 10, clearing by 7 tonight. 10-minute delays on the M11 southbound at Junction 14 in Cambridgeshire. And on the trains, disruptions occur on the Elizabeth line between London Paddington and Heathrow, and Great Western Railway between London Paddington and Slough. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Safe journey home, and now it's time for your latest news headlines, and here's Sam Francis.
Very good evening to you. Just coming up to 5:32, the top story. Police say it is a miracle there weren't more serious injuries after a car ploughed into crowds at Liverpool's Premier League victory parade last night. The King says he is deeply shocked and saddened, with the Prince and Princess of Wales also calling it a heartbreaking end to what should have been a joyful day. Princess Anne visited Liverpool this afternoon to meet emergency crews there and praised their remarkable bravery. 11 people remain in hospital, all in a stable condition and are said to be recovering well, according to Merseyside Police. Earlier, Detective Chief Superintendent Karen Jondrill said that officers are continuing to analyse footage of the crash.
We have arrested a 53-year-old man from West Derby on suspicion of attempted murder, dangerous driving offences and driving whilst unfit through drugs. He remains in custody where he is being interviewed. We have a total of 65 confirmed casualties, many of whom required hospital treatment, and our officers and family liaison officers are providing specialist support to a large number of these victims.
Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer also says the country stands with the city of Liverpool after what he described as scenes of joy turned to devastation.
All stands together and the whole country stands with Liverpool. I'd like to thank the first responders who did a fantastic job last night and continue to do so. There's now an ongoing investigation. I'm being kept updated, talking frequently to the Mayor, Steve Rotherham. But as I say, my thoughts and the thoughts of the whole country will be with everybody in Liverpool today.
King Charles has made history, becoming the first British monarch in nearly 50 years to deliver Canada's speech from the throne. Well, that visit follows an invite from Prime Minister Mark Carney, seen as a pointed response to Donald Trump's claim that Canada could become America's 51st state. Speaking in Ottawa, he praised the country's transformation since his mother's visit in 1977, calling Canada truly multicultural, independent and rooted in British, French and Indigenous heritage. And His Majesty also recalled past global crises from the Cold War to the War on Terror and warned that Canada now faces new threats today.
Today, Canada faces another critical moment. Democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, self-determination and freedom are values which Canadians hold dear and ones which the government is determined to protect.
And vote reform, get reform. Those were the words of Nigel Farage, doubling down at a press conference in central London today. The Reform UK leader backed reinstating the winter fuel payment and scrapping both net zero targets and asylum seeker hotels. He also said lifting the two-child benefit cap would be the right thing to do. Nigel Farage paid tribute to victims of the Liverpool attack as well and turned his fire on Sir Keir Starmer. He is pitching reform as what he says is the only real opposition to a Labour government. That's it for now. Do join us for the full roundup at 6 o'clock, and Martin will be straight back after this.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Afternoon. Yes, it is time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Overall, tomorrow looks quite a bit drier and quite a bit brighter than today, but still there will be a few showers around. Not quite so chilly either tomorrow. It's been a bit dull and dismal across a good chunk of the UK. Still plenty of outbreaks of rain and drizzle around this evening. Even a few heavy downpours might even catch a thunderstorm, generally pushing away out into the North Sea. But this line of rain likely to persist through the night across parts of East Anglia, the Midlands, up towards Wales. And again, some heavy bursts mixed in with that. A few showers in the far north of Scotland, much of central and eastern Scotland staying dry and clear through the night, temperatures dipping down into single figures. Quite a mild night in the south. Still that zone of heavier rain over some central parts of England and Wales early on, and still a few showers coming into northern Scotland during tomorrow. The odd one getting into the Highlands first thing, but much of eastern, southern Scotland having a sunny start to Wednesday. A brighter day for Northern Ireland, although still predominantly cloudy in the morning, and then there's cloudier zones through parts of England and Wales, still providing some outbreaks of rain, which could still be on the heavy side, particularly over the Midlands and mid-Wales first thing. That'll slowly push south and introduce a few showers down across the southeast of England from mid-morning onwards. Then we'll see a few heavy showers breaking out over maybe northeast England and southeast Scotland. But for many places, particularly in the west, it's a much drier, much brighter day tomorrow with some decent spells of sunshine and feeling a bit warmer as well. The winds will be lighter and temperatures close to a touch above average across the southeast. We might sneak over 20 degrees Celsius. Getting warmer still on Thursday, but as you can see, for many it's going to be a soggy start. A lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. That should become more confined to Scotland and Northern Ireland, always staying quite grey and murky in many western areas, but parts of the Midlands and eastern England will probably brighten up and turning a little bit warmer as well, although not feeling much warmer with the rain and the wind across Scotland and Northern Ireland.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 5:38 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, brace yourselves. Just 2 weeks left to get your entry into our biggest ever Great British Giveaway. Your chance to win a brand new motorhome worth a whopping £67,000. Here's the details that you need for your chance to win it.
Someone is going to win the biggest prize package to date, and that someone could be you, driving away in this Elnag Baron 560 motorhome, courtesy of Marquis Leisure. It has plenty of room for your family of four, comes complete with kitchen, bathroom and all the space you'll need for life on the road. And the best news? You can drive it on your existing driving licence. Plus, we'll also give you a further £5,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. Don't delay. You can't win if you're not in the draw. For another chance to win the lot, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB13 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 6th of June. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Best of luck with that. Now then, Nigel Farage is accused Sir Keir Starmer of being one of the most unpatriotic Prime Ministers in our history earlier on today, as Labour bite back, calling Mr Farage a self-serving career politician. Well, earlier today, the Reform UK leader held a press conference, putting more pressure on Labour, saying the party has simply collapsed.
Now, they, of course, right now are absolutely terrified of reform. And if you think the Conservatives had a bad day on May the 1st, arguably, Labour did even worse. We completely wiped them out. This government is off to the worst start of any government since Eden and the Suez Crisis in 1956. They are collapsing in terms of support. Their response to us is just to turn on the Labour lie machine.
Well, the Prime Minister there getting both barrels from the Reform UK leader. I'm joined now in the studio by GB News' political editor, Christopher Hope. Chris, Farage is back. He's back in this chair a week today. He was back in the political ring today, swinging into Sir Keir Starmer, throwing down the gauntlet, challenging him to a one-on-one debate, a red wall rumble and a miners' welfare in the red wall. Why today?
Well, that's a good question. He wasn't around last week, reportedly on holiday when everyone else was busy in Westminster. Don't forget the Brexit sellout deal, the critics say, was signed on Monday. Chagos deal on Thursday. Where was Farage? Offering up his thoughts. And then today, when no one's around, all the leaders are on their half-term break. Who pops up? But Nigel Farage, the stage is cleared. It's all for him. It strikes me he's been quite canny here by playing the system. He clearly thinks that Westminster doesn't work for him. He can't He can never get a word in edgeways. He's attacked in PMQs. He can't get called because of the nature of being a minor party. So he simply is timing his interventions. He did it over Christmas when, of course, Reform battered the Tory party on membership numbers. Again, happening today, fascinating, and it's kind of worked. We heard there, didn't we, how he would reverse a winter fuel cut. He also would lift this two-child benefit cap. That's parking the tanks firmly on the Labour's lawn. He wouldn't commit to the pension lock, but watch that space. He implies maybe some on that news on that in the future, and they'll lift the tax-free allowance to £20,000. And also this transferable tax allowance for married couples, a big issue for the Tory right going back decades. The Tories brought in some idea, a version of that, which was barely taken up because it's quite complicated. £5,000 to transfer, your tax allowance to Mrs. Daubney. And the idea, by the way, Martin, is to make more people have more children, although you can't order that, being Nigel Farage at Reform.
He did say, "I'm not the Pope." When it comes to, can you please have more children? But on a serious point, he spared his opponents absolutely no mercy. On Starmer, this man doesn't believe in anything. His leadership is dismal and inspiring, disconnected from real life. It's unpatriotic. Over half the country thinks it is, frankly, pointless. On Rachel Reeves, hopelessly out of her depth. On Angela Rayner, well, at least Angela Rayner didn't lie on a CV. I'm not even sure she's got a CV. Do I fear her? Absolutely not. But, Chris, I've noticed something as a sea change. They're not going after Nigel Farage so much anymore on the fact he cozies up to Putin. He's going to smash the NHS. They're going after him on the numbers. His policies are coming out, and most of the hostile questioning today and the political reaction has been about this doesn't add up. Can you afford it?
And rightly so. So the attack on Putin is remarks made by Farage in 2014. He said he admired Putin, not for what he's done. I think he just invaded Crimea, but as a strong leader, and that line has been used to attack him ever since.
But they those don't land.
And even the idea about privatising elements of the National Health Service, that also hasn't worked. But looking at what he's doing, that's where they have got a chance for the rival parties. Labour calling it fancy promises, a return to the chaos of Liz Truss. Ed Davey calling it Liz Truss on steroids or speed or some such language. Conservatives there saying Farage's figures don't add up. I was fascinated by a question from the press conference, 15 questions. GB News, by the way, towards the end, that's fine by us. We don't own Farage, he's for everybody, that's great. At the end, we heard Fraser Nelson, a columnist at the Times. He said, as I'm always saying on your show to Lee Anderson and Richard Tice and others, how can you form a government without a shadow cabinet? Key question. And I think the answer was quite interesting, quite instructive from Farage. History says no, but the circumstances say yes. He's trying to get us to believe that forget all the past, the two-tier, the two party system, we are going to have a different election in 2029. Fascinating.
That's right. When he was asked, could you be the next Prime Minister, he said something extraordinary is happening. I think it's going to get dirty. It's going to get down on the cobbles politically. Is there any chance whatsoever, do you think, of the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, taking up this offer of going toe-to-toe in the Red Wall or Working Men's Club? It'd be quite a spectacle.
Well, that's that story that emerged from the trip to Albania, the idea that the PM would take on Farage in a debate. Farage throwing it back into the PM's court, saying, yes, name the date, I'll meet you in the Red Wall. I can't see it happening anytime soon, anytime bar 6 weeks out from the election if the polls are tight. Why would the PM want to present Farage as an equal when the PM has well over 300 MPs, Farage has 5? And even by the election, if Farage wins every single by-election between now and the election day, he might have 20 MPs. He's still a tiny party. But look at those numbers there. What I find fascinating, both two things. Find out now on the polling, for putting Reform up 3 at 32 points, Labour 21, Tories 14 points. Extraordinary. All that leakage from the Tories going straight onto Reform's total. But look at YouGov today, showing us that both Starmer, Badenoch and Ed Davey all would make a better PM than Nigel Farage. I think he's got to work on his projection as a Prime Minister in waiting, and that's what today was all about.
And I think there's one huge reason that Keir Starmer won't take the invite to go toe-to-toe in the Red Wall, and it's this. Farage said, let former coal miners fire the questions at us. That's every politician's worst nightmare. Facing the music, facing the public, unfiltered.
We've tried that here. We've tried that with our event last year, or
the Rishi Sunak
one. Yeah, and that was an attempt at taking us out of the picture and giving the floor over to
the
leaders.
miners' welfare. Have you ever been in the miners' welfare, mate? I was born and bred in it. I was drinking in them when I was about 13.
Starmer can call out
every politician's worst nightmare.
Starmer can call out Farage's claims.
I'm being told I've got to move on. It's been great to have you back, mate. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, if you search some holiday sun, then here's the forecast for some of the top European destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello, well, there's plenty of sunshine across Europe and it's feeling warm there too, with some spells of rain or thunderstorms across the east. Now, we have lighter winds across the Canary Islands and Madeira, plenty of sunshine across Portugal and Spain, likewise as we go into Italy, but there will be a few showers across eastern areas, perhaps some thunderstorms developing as well. Plenty of sunshine then on offer through the rest of the week and temperatures rising nicely, highs of 30. Bye-bye.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Nigel is back.
Good evening.
Unfiltered.
Are these proposals bold enough?
Uncompromising.
Will it bring growth?
Unmissable.
We as a country are brilliant.
Nigel Farage returns next Tuesday from 7 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Amazing. I'm so pleased for him, and I think everybody in Northern Ireland. He did defeat an Englishman in the playoff.
He did.
Which is
Justin Rose.
Yeah.
See, Justin Rose, not many people are going to talk about Justin Rose, well, apart from us.
Yes.
But Justin Rose, it talk about, the bridesmaid and the bride, and it's been that with Rory. He's been the runner-up in the Masters twice. And 44 years old, and to do what he did and get a round of 66 was incredible. But Rory, see, people have written Rory off, and I've got to admit, even a couple of years ago, and I'm thinking, this is not going to happen for Rory, because it's this ultimate Grand Slam. Now, I think in golf, the Grand Slam is probably harder to win than any other sport, tennis, anything else. Because if you just look at the list, so this is basically to win the PGA, the American PGA, the US Open, the Open here, and the Masters. So this is to win the big four throughout your career. And only Gene Sarazen in 35, Ben Hogan in 1953, Gary Player in 1965, the legendary Jack Nicklaus in 66, and Tiger Woods in 2000. They're the only people to have done it. And if you think of all the great golfers over the years, nobody, apart from them, have managed it. And now Rory's managed it, and that makes him the greatest European golfer there has ever been.
Well, there's emotion you see there. I mean, you see what he so wants. I mean,
absolutely. I mean, he broke down in tears at the end, and it's not surprising because this is the thing. And it's 2011 was the last time he won a major. So at the time when he was much younger, they were coming left, right, and centre, and you think this kid's going to do everything. And then he was winning tournaments, but not those majors. And it was the Masters. That was the one he wanted. Well, give him a bus tour. Get the open top bus out. Get him around, and
he will.
He'll deserve it. I mean, absolute hero.
GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. It's 5:51. Let's go to Liverpool now. Speak to Charlie Peters. Got all the latest from the ground there on Liverpool. Charlie.
Well, good evening, Martin. Yes, a 53-year-old man from West Derby, a suburb in Liverpool, remains in police custody, detained yesterday after that appalling incident here on Water Street by the Strand in Liverpool city centre, with a car ploughing into crowds gathering for the trophy parade for Liverpool Football Club after they were victorious in the Premier League. So that 53-year-old man suspected of driving the Ford Galaxy on your screens now through that crowd, just 100 feet or so up the road from where I am now. There is a heavy police presence here. Investigations are ongoing, and we heard from the Assistant Chief Constable, Jenny Sims, earlier today, who told us that it was an extensive investigation, that they were following several inquiries. We also heard from police sources that they had until lunchtime tomorrow to continue questioning that man and also to continue those investigations. Here on Water Street, GB News cameras have picked up. Forensic teams continue to operate well into the afternoon, but also uniformed and non-uniformed officers continuing inquiries down the street. Many appear to be checking out CCTV footage, listing off the various buildings and points of observation they may have had over the scene. Well, this evening, and this is anticipated shortly, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, will be visiting Liverpool. She'll be meeting with Deputy Chief Constable Chris Green. We're also expecting her to be with the Metro Mayor Steve Rotherham, and her visit comes soon after the Princess Royal also visited Liverpool, where 65 people were treated for injuries, 50 in hospital, 11 of them remain there. They are recovering well in a stable condition. But when asked earlier, the police could not confirm how many of those 11 were the children who we know were caught up in that dreadful incident yesterday.
Thank you, Charlie Peters, for the latest there from Liverpool. It's been a fantastic show today as well. The King and the Queen in Canada on a royal visit. Talking of which, prepare yourself now for TV royalty. It's Michelle Dewberry.
Thank you, Martin. Great show today. Coming up on Jubes & Co tonight, I've got Ben Habib and Matt Lars, and we've got a lot that we need to discuss. Of course, all of these policy direction of travel, call them whatever you want, from Reform UK. Let's look at that. Are they the party then for the working class? Also, the skills revolution. So much focus now on apprenticeships. But don't forget, it was the Labour Party that battered apprenticeships by telling everyone, all these young people, to go to university when half the time they didn't actually even need to. Also, Tommy Robinson released from prison today. That's got a lot of you talking. I'll see you in 2.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed boilers. Sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon. Yes, it is time for your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Overall, tomorrow looks quite a bit drier and quite a bit brighter than today, but still there will be a few showers around. Not quite so chilly either tomorrow. It's been a bit dull and dismal across a good chunk of the UK. Still plenty of outbreaks of rain and drizzle around this evening. Even a few heavy downpours might even catch a thunderstorm, generally pushing away out into the North Sea. But this line of rain likely to persist through the night across parts of East Anglia, the Midlands, up towards Wales. And again, some heavy bursts mixed in with that. A few showers in the far north of Scotland, much of central and eastern Scotland staying dry and clear through the night, temperatures dipping down into single figures. Quite a mild night in the south. Still that zone of heavier rain over some central parts of England and Wales early on, and still a few showers coming into northern Scotland during tomorrow. The odd one getting into the Highlands first thing, but much of eastern, southern Scotland having a sunny start to Wednesday. A brighter day for Northern Ireland, although still predominantly cloudy in the morning, and then there's cloudier zones through parts of England and Wales, still providing some outbreaks of rain, which could still be on the heavy side, particularly over the Midlands and mid-Wales first thing. That'll slowly push south and introduce a few showers down across the southeast of England from mid-morning onwards. Then we'll see a few heavy showers breaking out over maybe northeast England and southeast Scotland. But for many places, particularly in the west, it's a much drier, much brighter day tomorrow with some decent spells of sunshine and feeling a bit warmer as well. The winds will be lighter and temperatures close to a touch above average across the southeast. We might sneak over 20 degrees Celsius. Getting warmer still on Thursday, but as you can see, for many it's going to be a soggy start. A lot of cloud, outbreaks of rain and drizzle. That should become more confined to Scotland and Northern Ireland, always staying quite grey and murky in many western areas, but parts of the Midlands and eastern England will probably